Josh, it's finally here. Not only episode 30 of the podcast, but Deadpool Wolverine is in theaters. We saw it twice. We're going to give our brief overview of what we thought about it, but we're getting into the spoilers. So this is your warning now. Heavy spoilers coming. We're going to talk about the cameos. We're going to talk about all the jokes and everything. We're really going to dive into what we like and maybe the few things that we didn't like about it. We'll also break down part 1 of season 6 of Cobra Kai and talk about the biggest news of the week from San Diego Comic-Con and from Apple TV+. But I'm Brad, he's Josh, and welcome to We'll Bring the Popcorn.
Before we get started with our news stories this week, we want to remind everyone that we are in the middle of our next merch giveaway. You can go to willbringthepopcorn.com/giveaway for all the ways you can enter to win your own t-shirt, a size of your own choosing. You can get this Deadpool and Wolverine inspired We'll Bring the Popcorn shirt in any size and color you want, or any other shirt you would like from our merch store. One thing we are also throwing in this giveaway now is your very own Deadpool and Wolverine matching keychains. This is awesome. I love this. I've got one of myself. I absolutely love it. You can get one of those too. If you're listening to the audio version of this podcast, go to episode 30 on our YouTube page and leave a comment of your favorite movie of the year so far, whether it's Deadpool and Wolverine or anything else you've seen so far this year. And if you do that, you'll be given another entry into our giveaway. So it's an extra way to get a better shot at getting that merch that you would like. Like we said, go to willbringthepopcorn.com/giveaway. The deadline is August 9th, so we are coming up on that deadline to get entered. All the information can be found there on the site.
Yeah, so you get your t-shirt, get a gift card to go to the movies, get the Deadpool and Wolverine keychain, which we have to say we're not affiliated with Marvel or anything. This is all from us, our own money, purchasing everything to it. But yeah, you have 2 different ways to enter. Get that bonus entry in as well, and we hope you enjoy the merch, and we'll get our winner on August 9th.
Yep, can't wait for that. So now moving on into our news story this week, we have a new project announced from Brendan Fraser. He's going to be playing Dwight D. Eisenhower in a new D-Day film called Pressure. It's about, Dwight D. Eisenhower as the general of high-ranking general in the U.S. military before he becomes president, obviously. And I'm looking forward to this because, we love Brendan Fraser. He's had a nice career resurgence in the last several years with Doom Patrol. I know you and I both love that. It's an over-the-top hilarious show on Max in the DC universe as well. But he's also got some, dramatic roles like The Whale that he won he won Best Actor at the Oscars for. So, like, him taking on some of these types of roles also just kind of lets him stretch his acting muscles, and I'm happy for it. Put Brendan Fraser in anything.
Yeah, absolutely love Brendan and love seeing his career resurgence. It's just been amazing to watch and see. I wouldn't say that him as Eisenhower is maybe the first casting, I would think, just because Brendan is kind of a taller, bigger guy. Sure. And from what I remember of Eisenhower, he seemed to be much more smaller, but he's such a great actor. He can make it work. And yeah, to get a dramatic World War II type of role like this and dealing with, everything with Normandy and the planning and going into that, it sounds like it could be a really good dramatic movie.
Definitely excited for that. Like I said, it's been so great to see him kind of come back. I know he was out of Hollywood for a long time, and he's come back, and like everybody seems to have nothing but great things to say about Brendan Fraser. I remember everybody being over the moon and elated when he won the Oscar, and the speech he gave was an all-time classic as well. Like, he's so good, so funny, such a nice person, and good to see, him getting some of these bigger roles, because that's exciting. It's a big deal to get these types of war movies, and him starring in this is definitely something that we're going to look forward to seeing when it comes out.
Yeah, when you go on the internet, there's 2 guys that you really can, if you need something positive on the internet, you're looking anything that's related to Brendan and anything related to Keanu.
Absolutely.
Like, whenever anything is ever talked about those 2 guys, it's just nothing but elation and good things of just how good of people they are. And yeah, I just love seeing Brendan's career keep going because, yeah, he deserves it. I mean, if you don't know all the story about everything he's been to, it's well worth seeing what he went through. And yeah, it's just, you can't help but cheer for the guy. And yeah, to get a role like this could be another Oscar role for him.
Could be. Yeah, definitely looking forward to that when it comes out for sure.
So moving on over kind of TV and streaming side, Apple has announced that they're cutting back on their spending on Apple TV Plus. They've spent $20 billion in 5 years on all their TV and movie properties and stuff. So kind of said they're just going to kind of roll things back, make it a little less big and over the top, because like They said Severance cost $20 million an episode to make
wild.
for season 2, but there's also saying that Apple TV Plus is getting less views a month than Netflix gets in a single day. And I gotta say, it's gotta be advertising. Like, even though they've had Ted Lasso and some like big movies and everything else, even Fly Me to the Moon was an Apple distribution. You barely saw anything about Fly Me to the Moon before it came out. You got like one trailer that played in theaters, but I didn't see any big campaigns going out. Even with Ted Lasso, I never remember seeing a ton, even though it was a gigantic show. Like, it feels like maybe advertising their shows and what's around, even though Severance and Ted Lasso and For All Mankind and Monarch and all these big things they had, it's had good buzz around them. They're just not advertising well.
Yeah, it seems like they were relying a lot on word of mouth too, because that's how I hear of a lot of their shows, right? And it's unfortunate because there is a lot of really high quality content on Apple TV Plus. So if you have, Apple TV Plus, you know a lot of the good stuff that's on there if you've spent any amount of time. And a lot of their stuff is very well received, very critically acclaimed, TV shows and things that come out with. And it makes sense that they're scaling back. I hope it doesn't mean they're sacrificing quality though, because they do have, if you look through Apple's, catalog of stuff that they've come out with, their original content, they get big names in these projects. So it's not like they're creating the next stars. They're relying on built-in, bankable stars for this. And it's just not paying dividends the way they thought. But I think a lot of it, like you said, does have to do with advertising or lack thereof, because you see the occasional commercial, but a lot of their commercials are like, just subscribe to Apple TV Plus because we have X, Y, and Z, right? It's just relying on that word of mouth to, draw people in, and it may be a little bit of a miss in their advertising, which is weird because you don't think of lack of advertising when you think of Apple anyway. I mean, well over 50% of the country has an iPhone if I were to venture to guess. So they're doing a lot of things right, but for whatever reason, when it comes to this media stuff, that they can't seem to fully get their hands around, like making it bigger than what it could be.
Yeah, because Apple on the product side with their laptops and phones, even back to the iPod days and stuff, they're known for their commercials. And I would almost say there's an Apple commercial for their devices, every commercial break on everything you see. But when it came to their shows and films, yeah, it was just basically, well, we have this, and this, watch Apple TV Plus. It wasn't giving them the individual ads everywhere that you could see. So I do feel like advertising definitely played a part in this. But, I mean, they have a lot of big special effects, spectacles and stuff, as I mentioned with Monarch. Then you have For All Mankind, Foundation. All those are very big, heavy CG films and shows and stuff. And well, with like Fly Me to the Moon, it was $100 million production, which it had some CGI with all the rockets and everything else, but did that really need to be $100 million? I mean, you had Scarlett and you had Channing Tatum and you had a pretty big cast with it, but yeah, maybe they did inflate their budgets a little bit too much, and now maybe they can rein it in but keep the same quality.
And that's the hope, because when you look at that story and it says $20 billion spent in 5 years, that's an insane amount of money to be spending on that amount of stuff. But don't get me wrong, the quality is absolutely worth it. And I think of all these, I'll say it with a little bit of bias, I'm not a big Apple product user. Like I don't really own an iPhone as my personal phone regularly, but I had iPods back in the day and stuff like that. But bang for your buck as far as the price of the service, I think Apple TV Plus is the best bang for your buck for any of the streaming services. And I mean that wholeheartedly, because the quality is as high as it is, and it's by far the most affordable of the streaming services, especially with everything like, bundling, and look, how much we've talked about this up to this point of, all these streaming services talking about combining and bundling and packaging and, trying to put everything together to, even standalone, a lot of these are like 15, 16, 20 bucks a month in some cases. And Apple TV is the cheapest of them all. Yep. It's by far the most affordable. And I think you get just as much quality entertainment on that as you do just about anything else. So hopefully with them dialing it back doesn't mean the sacrifice in quality programming that they've had. I wish more people would check it out, because it sounds like they're not doing as well in numbers as they could, but I'm sound like I'm shilling for Apple, but it's really, really good stuff that's on there. And we've dedicated a pretty good amount of time, at least so far on this podcast, talking about stuff that they've done.
That was the wildest part to me, that they have as many views in a month as Netflix has. And we know Netflix has been around a lot longer.
It's a monster.
It's built, itself into a monster and stuff. But just say that a month's worth of views is not even a day of Netflix. Like, that's wild. Because, the quality, I can't think of anything that I've watched, and I haven't watched everything on Apple TV Plus, because there's a ton. They even have the Peanuts and Snoopy gang with some new stuff on there, and some Fraggle Rock and a lot of family programming. But the problem in the end is they're just not advertising it enough for everyone knows this is where you can watch these at.
Yeah, and that's a shame, but hopefully, like we said, they don't sacrifice quality, and we'll still get a lot of the good programming that they've had, and hopefully they continue to create more good stuff that we can watch as well. So keep an eye on that moving forward for sure. I kind of want to pivot now to, I know we've talked a lot about AI on here, and for good reason, because it's a big talking point now, but it looks like SAG-AFTRA is striking against the video game industry now. So we all know about the SAG-AFTRA, strike last year that really kind of took over the entertainment industry because everything shut down for a prolonged time. And you see the industry starting to finally catch up to that a little bit now that it's been almost a year since that's been resolved, which is crazy. But now they're striking against the video game industry. I know they're talking about Disney, Insomniac, EA, a lot of the major companies are being struck against, and AI is kind of at the forefront of that.
Yeah, we kind of knew this was coming. It was mentioned at the end of the writer's strike that, video games would probably be next, especially when it came to AI, about them trying to use AI for even more than just voice actors, for, generation of things within the games and assets and everything else. So it definitely seems like a fight that's nowhere near the end. And I mean, good on them for standing up for the principles. We know there's such a gray area with AI because it's pulling from every source on the internet. Is we even had another AI bot was trained on YouTube videos, and we never got a notice. No one got a notice that our stuff was being used to train AI, whether it was every video if they had certain ones. But I mean, that's the problem with AI. It is going and taking everything that it can find and repurpose it, but it's taking people's work, their voices, their likeness, everything, and retooling a different way. But it's still plagiarizing. It's still taking something someone else created to create something new.
Yeah, and it's like I said, this is that slippery slope that we keep talking about, that we, can see kind of coming, and it's kind of, coming to a head and butting heads with, people that are doing the work on these projects. And this is what I start to worry about, people and lack of opportunities in the industry. If, AI is going to start taking over everything that gets done, where's the original thought? Where is the human element in a lot of these cases is going to come in? And good on them for standing up for themselves. I know, like, you're seeing a lot more, like, even like higher profile actors and actresses lending their voices to video games now. And, who's to say that, with AI taking over, they don't take their voice and apply it to literally anything. I mean, obviously there's, intellectual properties and things like that people have to kind of, take care of for themselves. And if they're willing to and agree to license their voice and their likeness for certain things, that's one thing. But like you said, once you start seeing some of these cases where they may not necessarily be, or start cutting corners, and that's where it really starts to, really go down that slippery slope that we're talking about, where, stuff will get made quicker, but at what cost? You know what I mean? Like, I'm finding trouble putting the right words to it, but it's very troubling because, when you take the human element out of certain things, it starts to become very stiff, and you worry about quality of content as well, just other than just slapping a label on something because it's popular and it's completely AI generated, and, it may not have the same impact as it would. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and the video game industry has been very volatile this year. Like, we've had, I'm forgetting the number, but there's been thousands upon thousands of layoffs and studio closures and everything else. And could it be, especially a lot of the bigger groups like Electronic Arts and Take-Two Interactive and everything, is it them kind of gearing up to replace a lot of these roles with AI and do that? But yeah, we can't forget about the human element when it comes to making movies and TV shows and video games and stuff. Like, AI should not be, again, it should be a tool to help, but not a tool to replace.
Right, agreed. And that's hopefully where they wind up meeting in the middle on this, I think. Because like we've talked about it before, it is a useful tool, but it's a tool, not a be-all, end-all to replace everything. And hopefully we kind of bridge that gap and come to that happy medium where we can use it in ways that are effective, that doesn't completely replace people, right? Because like you said, not only is the video game industry starting to really be affected by it, but animation as well is starting to feel some of that crunch too. I know people that work in the, that industry as well in animation that are having, trouble, landing on their feet after places like Disney and stuff are closing, and other studios like that are like not necessarily closing, but laying off a high percentage of the workforce. And it just throws a lot more people in the pool to compete for, less opportunities. And it sucks because, these people have honed their craft for how many years, and they're not getting the opportunities that they maybe could. And it sucks. And hopefully, we find a way to bridge that gap and can keep people in that industry doing things they love to do.
Yeah, and even people going forward, like those younger people that want to get into the video game or movie or TV industry, it's vastly changing because it may be, instead of being a CGI artist or something else, well, now you're an AI artist and you're just using prompts and other things to create with instead of actually creating yourself. So you're more just learning how to use phrases properly to have AI create it instead of getting in there and making it by hand. Like, it's hopefully this doesn't drag on as long, because video games take a very long time to come out, even longer than movies. It's comparable to like an animated film. Like animated shows and films take years to make. Video games can take 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years depending on the studio and how big it is. So this could have a big pushback on the gaming industry and kind of how their schedules, and like we've already had a lot of push with video game stuff too. This is probably going to delay for a while, but it'll be worth it if everyone involved here gets what they need and want out of that, especially the voice actors who, need to get paid correctly for the work they do, because there's so much memorable stuff in video games. A lot of it you can tie to who was the voice behind it. Yeah,
absolutely. And hopefully, it keeps trending in a positive direction like that. So hopefully they get it all sorted out and people can, find that happy medium that we're hoping they find.
So moving on to stories from San Diego Comic-Con. So we haven't had a whole lot of big news coming out of different studios. Marvel did drop a big bomb, which we're going to get to here. But DC showed off a few trailers. They give us confirmation that the Batman Part 2 will film at the beginning of the year. Gave us a little more look at Creature Commandos and the Penguin series and stuff. But it was kind of between The Boys and Marvel that got the biggest stories. So starting off with The Boys, we did get an announcement that a prequel series is coming called Vaught Rising. It's set in the 1950s. You got Jensen Ackles returning as Soldier Boy. You have Aya Cash returning as Stormfront. So it's kind of give you how Vaught came to be, but also some of the early exploits of Soldier Boy and Stormfront, which could be, kind of interesting to see, to go back into the older age and see if they keep up the same insanity then as they did, now. But we also got word that Jensen Ackles, and if you haven't watched the end of the latest season of The Boys, Comic-Con did announce Jensen Ackles will be returning as Soldier Boy in the final season of The Boys.
Yeah, and, obviously that's a big spoiler if you haven't watched it yet, but all of the episodes of The Boys are out, and we will eventually do a recap of that as well. But yeah, it's not surprising that they're going back and touching on the Soldier Boy and Stormfront story, because those are characters that get introduced in the 3rd season of The Boys, and they're big prominent parts of it. But they have a very checkered past way back, way back then. And that story kind of plays out, if you've seen the show, like where they're coming from, what their ideology was, things like that. And I think it's got a real good potential to be an absolutely crazy TV show. If you watch The Boys, you know how insane it is anyway. There's a lot of stuff, very graphic, gory, violent, vulgar, not meant for anybody that has any type of sensitivity.
No, just not meant for anybody, really.
Really, it's not, because there's just it offends so many people in a lot of different ways. But,
everyone is equally offended.
Right. So I think that's one of the charming things about the show is, like, there's something for everyone that'll make you just, like, grit your teeth a little bit, like, I can't believe they put that in there, especially this most recent season, which is getting a lot of back and forth. But it is good to see that they are going to go back and kind of touch on those characters who do play such a big part in season 3. I'm looking forward to it.
Even with like Stormfront with her past and everything, like she has a very dark checkered past with her viewpoints and everything. So there's a lot that they will certainly be playing with on that, because she has a very dark type of view on history and who she aligns with. So yeah, that could be a lot of fun. I mean, Jensen Ackles was great as Soldier Boy, so to get a little bit more as him and let more of his story be expanded, and not just be, a bit piece here and there. It's going to be really good to see him leading, that up, and, getting more of Stormfront's insanity and, what she believes in. But yeah, so, we got Gen V season 2 next year. We have the final season of The Boys potentially looking like 2026. So I'd assume this probably 2027 is when we'll see this come out.
And that makes sense. It's so funny to see Jensen Ackles in a role like Soldier Boy, because if you know anything about Jensen Ackles and the way he's revered by a lot of people in Hollywood, is like, he's one of the good guys. He's one of those, like, not a lot of people really have anything negative to say about him. And to see the character like Soldier Boy completely unhinged, it's kind of fun to watch them flip that switch and kind of do something that is totally outside of their normal character, which is always fun to watch from a performance standpoint. So excited for that character to get his own show. I'm excited for Gen V. I'm excited for, the story for The Boys to finally wrap up at this point, because I think they're getting to what appears to be a pretty epic showdown for the final season. The way they left season 4 off, season 5 is going to be great. I don't like that I have to wait 2 years for it, and that's unfortunate, but the way they made it sound like it was going to film from November of this year to like the middle of next year. So a good 6-7 months of filming for what's going to hopefully be an epic final season.
Yeah. And back to Jensen, I got to meet him at San Diego Comic-Con back in 2019 for the final Supernatural panel there and stuff. And he was just personable and kind and nice to me as could be, and shook my hand. Yeah. We had a conversation. We shared a few laughs. Like, he seems like a great guy. And then you had to see, especially because they haven't even really touched on more of the crazier parts of the Soldier Boy character from the comics, that, to see him, is kind of almost with Brendan and Keanu, like, everyone just talks about how nice and kind and good of a person he is. To see him playing that kind of role has been a lot of fun. And yeah, so we got a lot to look forward to, even with the main line of the Boys series ending. We've got Gen V, we've got this series with Vaught Rising to kind of continue the Boys on.
Yeah, and who knows what other stories they may spin off from this as well, because there's a lot of different ways they can go based on how they end the show as well. So hopefully something else will branch off and we get something still in that universe as well, because there's a lot of different stories that you can tell about a world full of superheroes, right? There's always stories that can be told, and everything they've done so far seems to be really popular and really working well. So
nothing is off limits.
Yeah, and absolutely nothing is off limits. That is right, because when we touch on that, we got some stuff that we won't touch on very specific things, but if you've seen it, you know what we're talking about. It show's absolutely crazy, and I love it. But let's pivot to Marvel. So our last 2 stories are going to touch specifically on Marvel and what they brought to San Diego Comic-Con. As we're recording this all happened yesterday. So Marvel, as they are wont to do sometimes, broke the internet once again with the things they presented. The first thing we want to touch on is the Fantastic Four film. So they had a panel with the cast of Fantastic Four coming out, and you get a little bit of a preview of what it's going to be about and some of the things that are going to go into the show. Now, specifically, we know it's a 60s theme, 60s/futuristic theme, but they had some cool stuff in the panel that they also touched on.
Yeah, so the movie is going to be called The Fantastic Four First Step, so it's kind of got a more official title with a tagline to it. Yeah, it's a retro futuristic 60s. They even had the Fantastic Car flying around Hall H there, which is kind of a lot of trust because it flew over top of the cast. They start filming Tuesday, July 30th, and you have the Fantastic Car over top of their heads. I'm like, okay, that's a lot of trust in those wires over your brand new cast. Which they did announce as well that the Fantastic Four will be appearing in the next 2 Avengers films. So just straight out like, hey, this is their first appearance. Here's 2 more confirmed appearances, which is, fantastic. And they did show, which that footage hasn't come out, that they showed some CG early test footage because, of course, there's a lot of pre-production stuff that goes in before they even film that showed Galactus like peering through a building. And we haven't got true Galactus seen yet. Like in the Fantastic Four: Rise of Silver Surfer, he was a cosmic cloud. You didn't really see much, and from what they showed off there, kind of confirmed that we're seeing Galactus,
which is awesome because he's probably in the next phase of Marvel going to be one of the, if not the big bad, right? So there's that stuff coming up. One thing that they did touch on that I found to be very interesting is they mentioned that it's not going to be an origin story. Mm-hmm. So this isn't a how did they get their powers kind of thing. Because if you know the Fantastic Four, things happen and they're not born with their powers. They gain their powers. But this is going to pick up after they have already got them. So you're jumping straight into the Fantastic Four as themselves, right? So I'm happy with that because the origin story's been done several times up to this point. We know who they are. It's not going to take you very long to figure it out if you've never seen the Fantastic Four or any iteration of them. But I'm excited. They've got a really strong cast in this show. Like every one of them that are cast here are brilliant actors. We love them in several other things. I know Ebon, we love the Bear. We're going to talk about the Bear next week. Joseph Quinn, who was absolutely brilliant as Eddie Munson in the last season of Stranger Things, is coming up in Gladiator 2 as well. Obviously, we all love Pedro Pascal. Who doesn't love Pedro Pascal? Vanessa Kirby's awesome too. So excited for this film to finally start being made, especially when we know how they've taken Deadpool as a Fox property and turned it into what it is. And I can't wait to talk about that. But I have a lot more confidence that they're going to take that much care with the Fantastic Four too, and we're finally going to get a proper Fantastic Four.
And you got Vanessa and Joseph, who are both like the only British cast members on there, playing brother and sister. So there's hopefully a little extra connection there that helps get that bond, because it's supposed to be a family. It's supposed to be a family dynamic of not only friends with the Thing and Reed and all that, and old coworkers and all, but you've got the siblings between Johnny and Sue, and see exactly how they do that up. And it's kind of good that they're not giving, kind of wasting time on giving us that origin. We got 3 Fantastic Four movies. We had the last reboot, then we had the 2 first. Well, we also had the one that no one talks about in the early 90s, which was just absolutely terrible. It's out there to watch if you can find it, but it is not good. But yeah, I'm really excited about the Fantastic Four. Like, we have to see now that we know that they're going to be the Avengers, how are they going to be brought into the MCU, brought into the current sacred timeline and everything, because, it is set in an alternate universe in the 1960s. So there's got to be something towards the end of the film, or at least I guess in the beginning of Avengers 5, that's going to bring them into this world. And transition right over into Avengers 5, because we got a huge drop at the very end of the panel. So they kind of started off by bringing out the Russo brothers. So we knew that they were in talks, but I guess it's a done deal. The Russo brothers are directing Avengers 5 and Avengers 6, Secret Wars. They're fully on board with that, even bringing in their writer, Stephen McFeely, wrote all of their movies from the MCU before, with Civil War, Winter Soldier, with Infinity War and Endgame. He's back, so we've got the 3 main keys to the biggest movies that the Marvel had before, so, that's fantastic. But we got the official new title for Avengers 5.
Yeah, and this is the moment that completely broke the internet, because Avengers 5 will officially be called Avengers Doomsday. Now, that could mean a ton of things, right?
Just Superman fighting Doomsday.
Is it a DC crossover? That would be crazy. But no, we get the confirmation that Doctor Doom is going to be, behind... He's going to be behind Avengers 5 and ultimately Secret Wars. So if you know anything about Secret Wars, Doom has a very big part to play in that storyline as well. But not only did we get the confirmation of Doctor Doom as the main villain of the next Avengers film, which is probably how you're going to have your Fantastic Four tie-in. Obviously, he's synonymous with the Fantastic Four. But we got the reveal of the actor that is going to be playing Doctor Doom, and if you gave me 20 names, he would not have been on that list to play Doctor Doom. The way they did it was super cool, so I'm going to leave you in suspense if you haven't seen it yet. So they bring out all of these people, they bring out all of these people dressed as Doctor Doom, all in one color, but then you have one guy in the middle in green wearing a Doom mask, and he steps out very dramatically, rips off his mask, and it is Robert Downey Jr. is going to be playing
That
Victor
crowd
Von Doom.
went insane.
Go watch the footage from San Diego Comic-Con when that was revealed. Everybody lost their minds. The internet broke. You have other outlets that don't normally cover Marvel. ESPN made a post about it, which I know they're a Disney property too, but ESPN was like, equate Robert Downey Jr. as Victor Von Doom to a sports story, and a lot of people were like, LeBron leaving Cleveland for Miami, that kind of thing, or what have you. Like, it people went nuts. I lost it when I saw that. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, what is going on here? And they give a little bit of context to make it sound like he's going to be a variant. Obviously, we know how brilliant he was as Tony Stark, and there's a little bit of backlash from that because he was so iconic as Iron Man, as Tony Stark. But if you know anything about the Marvel Comics and the multiverse, there is a variant of Iron Man that does kind of become Doctor Doom, and I'm thinking that's going to be kind of probably where they go with it.
Yeah, I think you've kind of had both, where Doom became like a version of Iron Man, and Iron Man became a version of Doom. And yeah, it's kind of interesting to see because, I mean, there are dynamics that you can do because we have like Tom Holland's Peter Parker and stuff of his connection that they gave to Iron Man and everything. So we potentially have dramatics that we don't know if they're going to have him without his mask too much, or maybe that'll be in the Secret Wars that you finally find out, who was behind the mask. But he may not be our only Doom. Like maybe they play up that he is a variant, because this is replacing Kang, is what it seems like. So, of course, Jonathan Majors was dropped from playing Kang. We've been waiting and trying to figure out for a while what they're going to do with the Kang storyline, because Avengers 5 was about Kang, and now it's switching to Doom. Could this be, just as we got with Kang, we just had a little teaser or taste that this is Kang. Well, this is Kang. Well, we haven't met the worst version of Kang yet. Could this be an introduction that gives us those tie-ins to the Avengers and the characters already with the Iron Man, Doctor Doom? Then we get a different actor because they've talked like once they introduce Doom, he's going to be around for a while. And because we know after the multiverse saga, we have the mutant saga with the X-Men and everything else. So there's a lot of tie-ins and things that they can do there. So Doom is going to be around for a while. I don't know if that's a commitment I see Robert doing again of that long, but I did not expect that Robert Downey Jr. to be under that mask and everything. But yeah, I mean, it could be to play up those dramatics that they think he's Tony, but he's not. But with the way they announced it, the Fantastic Four cast, and finding out that that's filming on Tuesday, and finding out right now that he's Doom, does that mean we're going to get RDJ in the Fantastic Four? Is he going to be from their world and come over with them whenever they transition over to coming to the main timeline?
It's a very strong possibility, but... And that's the fun part now. Now we get to speculate. We get to speculate what they're going to do, moving forward. We know a lot of the pieces that are in place now. We got other news coming out for different actors and different roles and other stuff that they're doing. Like we figured out what Giancarlo Esposito is going to be doing in the new Captain America film. And, you have all that, but everything now is kind of pivoting to, the Avengers now. Everybody's talking about how they're going to get there, what draws them together. And it's starting to really regenerate that buzz with, Deadpool and Wolverine going to be the massive juggernaut that it is going to be. Mm-hmm. And then you have these movies as well that are going to really just kickstart everybody's interest in Marvel again. We got the release date for Avengers Doomsday. It's going to be in May of 2026. So they've got to get working on that very quickly if they're going to have that ready in time for that. So you got to figure this stuff is going to start filming consecutively and very soon, right?
Well, it's crazy at the same time because Pedro is Reed Richards. He has Mandalorian Grogu to do as well, and that is May 2026 as well. So he's going to be facing off against himself in May of 2026. Same month. Wild. I'm guessing maybe a couple weeks apart. But that's kind of crazy to have, Disney owns both Marvel and Lucasfilm and everything else. So to have two gigantic films like that same month, I have a feeling maybe one of them's going to get moved, maybe Mandalorian Grogu or something, because you don't want them competing against each other, because Avengers Doomsday is going to be making a ton of money. Like, you have RDJ back, you're finally giving us Doctor Doom, because, we had Doctor Doom in the two Fox, but it wasn't the same. Nothing against the actor. They just didn't do Doom that well. Impact. So now we're getting a new version with RDJ. Like, it's mind-boggling that that's who they went with, because we've had rumors of Henry Cavill and so many different people, John Hamm, just so many different names, but Robert Downey Jr. was never, because there was talks that he might potentially come back as an Iron Man variant. Well, maybe this is what they were talking about, and he's the Iron Man variant that end up being Doom. And I've seen a lot of people using the DC line of you live long enough to see yourself go from a hero to a villain. Yeah. Well, now he's going from hero to villain.
And it's going to be a fun wild ride. We also got the release date of Secret Wars, so it's going to be the following year in May of 2027. So we did get confirmation of that. That is going to be absolutely insane. Mm-hmm. Like, Secret Wars is going to be nuts. I feel like it's going to be Endgame on steroids.
Oh, yeah.
I really do, because the entire premise around Secret Wars, if you haven't read the comics, is you get the best of the best from both sides. You get the best villains, the best heroes. They get put on this makeshift planet, and they just fight. It's the most simplistic way I can put that, but it's high stakes. There's bigger beings. Galactus is involved, which makes sense from a Fantastic Four.
We have potential for Robert Downey Jr. to face off against Thanos again using the multiverse.
Yeah, it's very possible. Like, the possibilities are endless, and it's going to be insane to see how they get there, because if you look at it realistically, we only have a handful of movies until we get there. Like, there's only, 3 movies next year? We've got Deadpool and Wolverine's the only Marvel movie out this year. Next year, you've got Thunderbolts, Captain America, and you also have Fantastic Four. Mm-hmm. Those are your 3 main Marvel movies that are coming out next year. And then you got the Avengers. So it's going to jump in very quick, and it's going to be crazy to see how they get there. It's going to be fun. Like, I'm very excited for the direction they're going in, especially with how Deadpool and Wolverine went. But we did also get confirmation that the Thunderbolts are going to appear in the Avengers too. Mm-hmm. So that group is going to be making it. This is what I mean when I say it's going to be like Endgame on steroids. You're going to get everybody and other things you may not have even thought of that are going to be in this.
Yeah, because we've already got potential rumors of course, because of how Deadpool and Wolverine is doing that, we have Deadpool and Wolverine showing up. There's rumors of Toby and Andrew Garfield coming back to be their Spider-Man and everything. Like, we could, even the rumors of the Fox X-Men showing up in one of these films to kind of get them a big payoff. So, like, we thought the cast and everything for Endgame and Infinity War was huge. Like, we're looking to double or triple that for Secret Wars. So I already think that Secret Wars is going to be much bigger than Endgame. Like, we know that kind of leading up to where we are now, that these last few phases of the Marvel Cinematic Universe hasn't been the greatest, but yeah, we're going from Thunderbolts to Captain America to Fantastic Four right into the Avengers. So, I mean, we got a ton to come out, and then we come out the other side with the X-Men and the Mutant Saga. Like, there's a lot to look forward to, but it's definitely going to be interesting to see how they set up Secret Wars. And it does feel that after all the controversy and everything with Kang, that Doomsday is now going to be a huge setup for Secret Wars.
I love it, and it's going to be exciting to see all the news that comes out between now and then. They're going to start shooting very soon, literally the week we drop. The day after we're going to drop this episode is when Fantastic Four starts production. So exciting times, ready to see them kind of get back on the upswing here, and they, just when you think they're kind of down and out, they find a way to jumpstart everybody's interest again, and we're right back on and enjoy the ride. When it's good, it's good. It's really good. So
yeah, and you've seen some people are already kind of hating on the idea of Robert Downey Jr. because of everything else, but it's like, give it a chance. I do not feel like he's going to be the only Victor Von Doom that we see, that there's a specific reason why he's there and a variant, and then we'll get another actor who's really going to carry us forward. Because one that I really wanted to see was like Cillian Murphy kind of be Doctor Doom. Maybe we see that, but yeah, getting RDJ back in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and having him be Von Doom, like, if they keep his mask on most of the time, it's going to be great. But I think there was kind of an Iron Man suit that went a little more Doctor Doom with that storyline. So is it going to be Iron Man Doctor Doom, or is he being Victor Von Doom, Doctor Doom, full out, even kind of ignoring any Tony Stark relation to that?
It's possible, but that's the fun part of waiting. We're gonna have to wait and find out, right?
No, I want it now.
If you get a chance, go check out that footage of him being revealed. It's insane. Just what I wouldn't have given to have been in that room, because they got some really cool stuff over the weekend with Marvel. Like, people got it, screenings of screenings of Deadpool and Wolverine. They got to see all this cool stuff that they're coming out with. If you got to participate in any of the other, if you get a chance, San Diego Comic-Con is just the best time. If you get a chance to ever go, we cannot recommend it enough. We've been there. We want to go back and do it again someday. And
with press credentials, so we can see a Marvel panel finally.
Awesome. I would be so looking forward to it, and we'll work on making that happen. But yeah, I mean, Marvel, once again, after having not been at Comic-Con for a couple years now, or at least not having a very strong presence, they were back, and they were back big.
Yeah, they didn't talk about a whole lot, but what they did, like they just dropped that huge bomb at the very end, and that was all right. See you. Good night.
Right. Impactful. Like, my God, it's gonna be fun to see what they do like moving forward now. But definitely exciting news coming out of Comic-Con for sure.
Yep.
Now we want to pivot to our TV review of the week, and it is Season 6, Part 1 of Cobra Kai. So this is the first part of a 3-part series finale that's going to eventually lead into a movie that's going to come next year that kind of ties everything together. It's like the end game of the Karate Kid universe. But Cobra Kai Season 6, Part 1, it is 5 episodes that just dropped. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this show way more than I ever thought I would when this first came out. I was like, they're making a sequel to The Karate Kid? That's going to be ridiculous. Here we are 6 seasons later, and it's still a fun show that I have gotten so much enjoyment watching over the years, and we just now have the kickstart to the last and final season.
Yeah, because it's silly, it's goofy, it's corny, it's over the top, and they play on that. They know they're being this way or that and stuff. Like, they're aware of, just how goofy and silly they're being with it and stuff. And there were some things with this season that was like, maybe they could have tried to do something different. Because there was something with Kreese that was very over the top, almost like Luke Skywalker going into the cave type of thing with Kreese. Like, okay, but that's the whole series has been that way. I mean, it's been very cheesy, tongue-in-cheek with a lot of stuff. And this first part is mainly about setting up what their next steps are. So they've got a new tournament, but it's a global tournament that they're going to be entering in, but they have to get it down to 6.
Yep.
And they have many different ways to go about trying to figure that out through this first 5 episodes.
Yeah, so at the end of the last season, you have, Johnny's dojo coming together with, Danny's dojo and kind of creating this super mega, group. And you have a lot of the kids that left Cobra Kai to join up with, Eagle Fang and Miyagi-Do, and they're kind of forming this. And we get some fun play on what are we going to call our dojo? Are we going to call it Miyagi Fang? Or like they come up with some fun back and forth.
Eagle, Miyagi-Do, Fang, something.
It's fun. But what I love so much about this show is it takes itself seriously without taking itself seriously. It's the best way I can describe the show. Like, it's all built around, you can solve all your problems with karate. Karate will make all your problems better. Mm-hmm. It's very silly and meta, but it's so much fun. Like you said, the whole premise of this season is the Sakai Takai tournament is coming up, and this big group can only be whittled down to 6 people. So it is up to them to try to figure out which 6 you're going to send. Now, if you know anything about the show, they kind of play on it too, where some of the characters are a little egotistical, like it has to be us, so you got to figure it's Miguel, Robbie, Tori, and Sam are kind of going to be like the guaranteed 4, but who of these other main characters are going to be the ones representing the dojo as well for the final 2 spots? Yeah. And you see that play out in somewhat hysterical and somewhat kind of dramatic ways of, going through different tests to prove themselves to be worthy of the 6 chosen. And, they wind up with the 6 that they do, and it ultimately winds up end of the season, kind of jumping ahead a little bit, having that group set and then setting up for what's going to be the next part, which is the tournament itself. So I had so much fun with this show. There's a lot of heart, a lot of humor. I'm going to say something that I've felt the entire time about this show, though. It kind of paints Daniel LaRusso as a whiny jerk sometimes, and it's kind of a little more redeeming for Johnny. But also with Johnny, there's times where I'm just like pulling for Johnny, like so much, and then there's other times I just want to punch Johnny in the face with some of the stuff he does. You know what I mean? But it's I love this show so much. I really do.
This season was definitely like that. That you got good parts of Daniel, but parts where he's still so stubborn that he doesn't want to work with Johnny at all. But Johnny has that stubbornness too, that he's still Cobra Kai, but he's not trying to be Cobra Kai, and he's got a baby on the way, and he's trying to figure this out, and he's trying to figure out how to be a partner to Daniel. Like, all right, this is they end up agreeing, a little bit spoiler, they end up agreeing to call it Miyagi-Do and keep it there because Cobra Kai has such a kind of troubled history behind the name and the feeling of it. So I'm going with that, but he's still holding, trying to help his Cobra Kai and his Ingle Fang kids more than he helps the Miyagi-Do kids and stuff. So that causes some conflict. He also ends up having to get a job because, their apartment flooded and they have all these issues, and we get some great back and forth of him. He cannot allow someone else lead. He has to be in control of everything, of every situation, and you get some great lines by him of just like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and I need a raise and I need this. And like, you've been here like 3 days. Like, you're asking for all this stuff. Like, why are you having me work this? Because I'm your boss and you've been here a week. Like,
he even tries to do a half-baked quitting scenario almost, kind of, where he's like standing on the desk like, I'm leaving, I'm starting my own dealership, who's coming with me, and it's just so and everybody's looking at him like, what are you doing? Who is this guy? Do you even work here? It's so funny. But there are heartwarming moments as well. They have some dynamics with the kids. They're seniors in a lot of the main cast are seniors in high school trying to figure out, where are they going to go in their lives. You have some that are considered a little more privileged or whatever, their worst fear is trying to get into a better school. And then you've got kids like Robbie and Tori who are like, well, there's not really that type of bright future for me. This tournament is kind of like my last chance to prove myself, which is an absurd premise when you're not even 18 years old or just turning 18, because you have your whole life in front of you at that point. But I get with the circumstances of where they come from, why they feel that way and things like that. And a lot of that plays out in their motivations to not only make the team, but win, because not only do you only get to pick 6 people, but you only get 1 boy and 1 girl to compete in the individual fighting portion of this tournament. So you only get 1 representative for each, and that kind of plays out in a little bit more of a dramatic way of, like having those motivations come into play, which I think is very smart writing on the writer's part, because obviously if you think of the males, you have in past seasons, you had Miguel, who was, the All Valley tournament winner in the first season. And then you had Hawk, who was the winner in the other tournament that happened. So you think maybe it could be one of those, or it could be Robbie. Spoiler alert, a little bit. It's Robbie that gets to be the guy. And you have a situation between Sam and Tori that I think was really fun in this season that they played with too, where they're kind of frenemies. They still hate each other kind of at the beginning, and they have a little bit of a breakthrough. But one of the more absurd things was the slumber party that Johnny
that's what I just started laughing about, was the slumber party.
Because it feels like they finally squash their beef and they're friendly, but they kind of start holding back on training against each other. And Johnny's like, no, you need intensity. This is the world tournament. So he sets up this absurd slumber party to get them to try to turn on each other through just the most absurd means possible. If you watch any episode, watch that one, because it's so funny.
Yeah, just trying to force drama between them to get them to fight and get angry at each other, and he's just sitting in the background the whole time of just staring them down and everything, like, do it. And then of course he has different means with stealing cell phones and stuff to try to get them to fight, and it's like, what's behind your back? Nothing. I think Johnny kind of got the most out of these first 5 episodes, because we see him go on a journey between, having to give up Eagle Fang and, those ties to Cobra Kai, because he gets a secret text that he thinks it's Kreese calling him, but we find out that it's not, and we get a little dynamic there of kind of how he feels about where Cobra Kai kind of left off and everything. And he, of course, with having a baby and the house and trying to change and getting a job, like, he had the most kind of to do this season past the kids. Daniel was kind of a background character for the season. Like, he was just kind of there for conflict, because there was one story point that they opened up with Mr. Miyagi and him, but they only went into some small details. There's more mystery to unveil there. Yeah. But we got some information that's causing conflict and everything else, which is also, to me, like, they've kind of talked like they weren't going to do a whole lot that either painted Mr. Miyagi in a bad way or did any changes. But there is kind of a mystery, which we don't know. Is it going to be in the next 5? Is it going to be in the final 5? When do we get this kind of resolution of something with Mr. Miyagi, but I had to laugh again with the cheesiness of it, that they find this box of stuff under a very clear trap door that was just underneath a rug. Like, has he never fully cleaned that dojo? Has he not taken stuff and moved it around to, in 20, 30 years, never have seen that trap door under the bed?
I think I could say logically it would make sense that he doesn't want to touch or move anything to kind of dishonor Miyagi's legacy, because a lot of that very, very much is intact from when Miyagi had the place. So I get why he hasn't, but no, it's very clear he hasn't cleaned that outside of maybe doing some sweeping for, like, even then, did he not move the rug when he swept? I don't know.
Yeah, this rug hasn't been washed in 30 years.
This is where our brains go.
But it's corny. Like, it's just stuff going at it, but it's like, oh, okay, so there's a mystery.
A little silliness to make the plot move forward. But that's really not an insignificant story thread, though, because as you watch this, what he finds out of Miyagi kind of really shakes his confidence in a lot of ways, to where he's very much trying to get out of the whole karate thing now. Like, his whole thing is, once he's done with, like, all of this, he's ready to move on and put this behind him. And this kind of revelation kind of has him questioning a lot of things that he's done with his life up to this point. Is my mentor the person who I thought he was? Or, and there's, things that shake up that we won't go into in depth here, but if you watch it, it'll make sense. But it plays a lot into his, where he's at mentally throughout a good chunk of this season. And it affects his relationships with a lot of people. It affects his relationship with Chosen a little bit. It causes him to be even more hostile towards Johnny in ways, because, they're both going through separate things, but instead of, just openly communicating like normal and rational human beings should, they go to these absurd measures to, try to get the upper hand. And,
a lot of, I'm going to fight you. Okay,
right.
Let's fight over it. Let's just determine this by fighting. Let's just fight.
And that's the absurd part of the show, but it's what gives it a lot of its charm, too. I've said it already. I love this show so much. It's so much fun. I'm very much looking forward to the next part that's going to be dropping in November. So you get the drop in July, you get the drop in November, and I want to say March is when the final episodes come
They didn't really give us a date. Right. They just said 2025, because we also have the movie coming out, which combines Jackie Chan's Karate Kid with, Ralph Macchio's Karate Kid. So I still have a feeling those final 5 episodes next year are going to tie into the movie, that they're going to bring those universes together in the series at the end, and then they're going to bring them to bigger light in the film, because there's got to be something that ties them together.
Yeah, and then the season kind of ends, as it should, if it's a part 1 of a 3-parter, on a bit of a cliffhanger. You have Tori have, this heartbreaking moment happen to her, and that kind of causes her to spiral, and somewhat, I don't want to say predictable, but just the mental, like, she's finally getting to where she feels like is a good place for her. She's kind of starting to fit in with the Miyagi-Do kids, because she's been Cobra Kai the longest, and, with Cobra Kai dissolving, or we think it's dissolving, which, slight spoilers, there's a lot of Kreese involved. Cobra Kai is going to be involved in this, and, she starts to spiral to the point where she does, spoiler alert, have some kind of conclusion with Miyagi-Do that leaves a little bit of a cliffhanger for the next part of the season that I won't spoil too much for you to watch, but it plays out in a very dramatic way, and you kind of hope, if you pull for any character in the show, her and Kenny are kind of the two that I've been pulling for the most, to kind of pull the nose up on some of the stuff. You get a little bit of a kind of an upswing for Kenny in this season too, that I'm hoping they explore a little bit more.
Everything with his brother kind of got a good payout, because you got the brother that Robbie faced off in juvie and everything, and they have a fight and a face-off, but then it's the brother who kind of has this, you know what, he might have actually been right about this stuff. I don't want you to end up like me. And it kind of gave it a great moment, but to kind of go back what you're talking about with kind of the end of this 5th episode, it was probably the only issue I had with this season, that, like, it was a good dramatic thing to do, but it's a character that's just been so beaten down through all the seasons so far, and you said she's finally getting something good and I don't want to spoil it, something bad happened to her. It was very quick of her just kind of disappearing and then showing up in a different way later. Like, it was like, you thought maybe there would be more of the kids going after her, or the parents or somebody, and it was just like, okay, no, we're doing this instead. Bye. kind of like after so long and everything they've been through, like it was a little too abrupt how they had that go on, because it clearly telegraphed something that we're going to see. Like, we know already who's going to square off at a certain point here because of that it just was so abrupt, and she changes this and that and just goes like, it's already telegraphing one of the things they're going to do. And I'm like, I'm hoping we get it, but it just, especially with everything her character's been through, and to cap off there, it was just way too abrupt just to make that change.
Yeah, it kind of felt a little bit shoehorned into, okay, we need something dramatic to leave you waiting for the next part. And I hope that when we do get to part 2, and that's the unfortunate part of breaking it up like this, is we don't know if they're going to explore more of this. I'm hoping they do, for the sake of, quality storytelling, obviously, but I hope it is something they explore, because she is a character that we have grown to care about now. Like, we really have. And you want to pull for her to, overcome and, put herself in the best position possible. She gets a lot of responsibility, unfortunately, thrust on her throughout this show, that a teenager probably shouldn't have to do. But it's a story that does happen in the real world. And I appreciate them kind of like, giving that a little bit of light and shedding, some light on that, because there are people that do unfortunately have tragic things that happen to them in their upbringing, in their lives, that have to get more responsibility put on them at a younger age than a lot of people probably should. And you kind of see the full weight of that, come full circle in this season, and she kind of snaps a little bit, and justifiably so. I mean, that poor girl's gone through a lot, and hopefully by the end we get some resolutions and she can have a little bit of peace, and we'll see where that story ultimately winds up. But she's definitely one I've been pulling for ever since she was introduced.
It's a very sympathetic character. You see the evil and the dark side, but you see where she's coming from. Like, she has had a hard life, and no one in her corner and backing up. And that's kind of where I said it kind of left me like, all right, at this point, I get it. It's a final season. I know you're setting up for dramatics, and there'll probably be a good payoff with her in the end. Hopefully. But it's like, it's almost like with the boys with Huey, like, give that guy a break already. Man. Give Tori a break already. A break, for the love of God. But yeah, as we wrap up here, I did want to touch on Barnes, because we got him in season 5 and everything, and it's kind of still being the villain character, but we got a decent little arc with him of turning things around, because as they're trying to whittle down everybody in Miyagi-Do down to choose the 6 who are going to going, they can't decide. So it's like, well, I want more Eagle Fang, I want more Miyagi-Do, I want my son, I want this, I want that. So they bring in Barnes to do it. So he runs them through this gauntlet of different things with his notes, and he's trying to figure out who's going to be there, and he's very tough and very harsh, and it all comes to an end of where, like, him and Johnny are kind of just laying it out to each other. Of course, they were in different, Karate Kid films and everything, but they kind of all laid it out, and we get a nice little arc in the end of Barnes, and where we leave his character from everything he did with Silver to now being kind of a more sympathetic character.
Yeah, and we can't touch on all the story beats that they have in this show. You get more story stuff from what I would consider like still main cast, but not like the main cast. So you have like the main core kids, but you have the other kids that are being more prominently shown, and you get some side stuff with them too that's very good with them. Do they want to go to the same schools? Do they want to go wind up and doing the same things? Especially with like Hawk and I want to say Ethan is his name. I forget the kid's name. I'm gonna
Dimitri.
Dimitri, that's who it is. Yeah, Hawk and Dimitri. That I don't know why I said Ethan, but Hawk and Dimitri. There's a fun story brewing between the two of them too, and it plays out in a really fun way so far that I hope comes full circle too by the time they end it. Yeah. There's a lot of runway to tie a lot of these stories up that we're just getting started, and I'm excited to see where it goes because we got 10 more episodes. We're now at the tournament, so we've got 10 episodes to get through the tournament and what the fallout is probably out of that too. So seeing how this series ultimately winds up and tying into what's going to be the movie that they do, I'm excited to see where it ends up because there's a lot of story left to be told. Yeah,
so it's been fun. It's had its heart and dramatic moments, and it's had its cheesy over the top. Even with Taguchi is just so over the top this season with his battle with Johnny, but he's like, okay, I'll take the honor. Like, yeah, you could find someplace else to live, and just kind of ignores. Yeah, he's really fun in there. But yeah, it continues the heart, the drama, the fun, some good action sequences stuff in there, and leaving and building some drama, which I hope has a good payoff in the end. Like, I wasn't a huge fan of how they handled it at the very end here, but I'm waiting for full judgment until we see how it plays out with these last 10. It is an interesting thing to split it up like that, because it does get you, all right, these work together very well, but now we've got a 3-4 month wait until we get the next part, and potentially another 3-4 month wait until we get the final part, and potentially maybe not everything gets resolved in the last episode and we go to the movie to get some resolution on things, because as we said, there's got to be something from that final 5 that leads into the movie when you're bringing those universes together. But I'm excited to see how it turns out. Like, it's been fun. Like, it's got so much cheesiness to it, but it matches the movies. The movies was cheesy a bit, and trying to bring back that legacy in a good way, and I think they've done a solid job of trying to continue on the Karate Kid in a different way. Even though it's like, well, we stop Kreese, so we go back to Kreese. It's jumped back and forth a lot, but hey, it knows what it is. It's not shy of what it is. It just lays right into what it is.
It's so good, though. I'm having a lot of fun watching it. I'm excited for the next part, too. And we'll obviously review that when that time comes, too.
Yep. So all episodes of Season 6, Part 1, all 5 are on Netflix right now. Go check them out. And the next 5 comes, I think, November 18th. But about mid-November, we're going to be seeing the second part. And we'll be breaking that down as well to see where everything ends up with the tournament, and see if the tournament is contained in those 5 episodes or not, or if it kind of bleeds over into the final 5 episodes. And moving on to our film review this week, if you can't tell from everything we've said to what we've got decked out on the desk today, that Deadpool and Wolverine, we finally saw it. We saw it twice. We saw it Friday night, went back Saturday morning. And so we're going to give you a brief overview of what we thought, but as I mentioned in the opening, we're going to go heavy spoilers. We're going to talk about those cameos. We're going to talk about some of our favorite scenes. It's going to give stuff away, By the time this drops, it's been out for 4 or 5 days, and it's given time. But if you don't want to be spoiled, make sure you skip the part of it. We'll kind of make sure in the video that we have a hard cut, but you kind of know when we're getting into the heavy spoilers here. But if you want kind of our spoiler-free reaction, we do text reviews of it on Letterboxd. We also just started on Metacritic and Rotten Tomatoes, and at least fan comments and stuff in there, so you can check out our written reviews, which will be spoiler-free on there.
Absolutely.
That you can see what we thought. But yeah, to dive right into it, we've been waiting for this for a long time. When we initially heard that, Deadpool 3 was going to be in the works and what Ryan was trying to do, and we knew the banter back between him and Hugh about joking about bringing him back, but we got Hugh Jackman back as Wolverine. We got the yellow suit and everything, and I told you kind of after we got out of both screenings, like, this was just pure joy to me. Like, I was smiling from the very first scene to the very last scene. Like, I was having so much fun with it. Those cameos were insane and ridiculous. The story, somewhat thin. It's there to service the main cameos and go through, but there is some heart, a ton of humor, and it was well worth the wait for me.
Yeah, so one of the things Marvel has done a lot of ways is casting the right people in the right roles, right? So Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, absolute home run. Chris Evans as Captain America, home run, right? You can say those with absolute certainty. Fox has historically, with these types of movies, not done a very good job, right? I think we can all admit that a lot of the Fox comic book movies and like superhero, properties, not the best for the most part. A long run, they do have some hits in there as well, but their overall track record hasn't been the best. I cannot think of a person more born to play a role than Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool. I really do, and I said that from the first movie. I said it in the second movie. Here in this third movie, he is still absolutely 110% in his element as Deadpool. Perfect casting. Just amazing, and the care and the love that he gives this character in these movies, it's so awesome to see it play out on screen, because this character, if you know anything about him from the comics, is vulgar. He's called the Merc with a mouth for a reason. He's not your typical prototypical superhero, but he gives it this fun spin that is so needed with a lot of the more serious like comic book properties. But this movie in particular, like you said, we've been waiting for, Hugh Jackman to come back as Wolverine in the Marvel universe, and he finally gets delivered in this film. And I've been smiling ear to ear thinking about this movie for the last couple days, having seen it twice, like you said. It is so good and so fun. Like you said, it's not an earth-shattering story by any stretch. It's a very, I don't want to say basic premise of the movie, but it's one of the few cases where I can forgive a thin plot with all the gravitas that comes around in the film, because the cameos are smart, they're funny, they make sense in so many ways. A lot of times you see a cameo and you're just like, what? It can be fun, but they're all smart. There's so much fan service. Like one of the things I jokingly said to you when we left the film is, so I guess Ryan Reynolds sat down and said, fan service, ? Answer, all of it. You get all the fan service you could ever want in this movie. There are things that we had been joking about that we've wanted to see ever since the multiverse saga has been announced. Like Marvel was jumping into it, and we got it in this movie, like in spades. It is so much fun. It's kind of reignited a love and interest I've had in Marvel and comic book movies. And I don't say that lightly, because we talk about that a lot here, but I had so much fun seeing this movie. It's very rare that I will go see a film and so much of it stays in my mind vividly and because with everything that we've got going on in the world and everything like that, a lot of stuff kind of comes in, cycles through, and goes out, and you kind of forget about it. This is a movie I'm going to be talking about for a long time because of how I felt watching it, how I felt after I've watched it and having to think about it, and then getting to watch it again and kind of picking it apart a little bit more, paying more attention to subtle things that are put into the movie that doesn't really come to the forefront as you're watching it for the first time. And I just have such a love affair for this movie, and it made me, I even made a social media post about it. I can't think of a better thing for me as somebody who loves movies, that when you hype a movie up so much in your head, more often than not, something happens that disappoints you and it lets you down. This didn't for me, and it's such a great feeling because there are so few cases really where you get super excited about like something like this and it over delivers, and this thing completely over delivered and exceeded any expectations I ever had.
Yeah, this is just pure entertainment. Like, this is just something that you can go into and be just joyfully entertained by the ludicrous, insane, over-the-top stuff it does. But Ryan and Hugh play off of each other so extremely well. They look like they were having such a great time with each other, especially the press tour, the Hot Ones episode, everything. They look like they're just having a blast with it all. But yeah, it is also kind of a big love letter in multiple ways, or to the Fox universe, like to what all these different actors started and worked with and worked through, the ups and downs and their struggles to get things going, or the changes and all the different castings that, we have multiple versions of the X-Men because we went in the past, which you had different casting and the younger, and then you had, the original actors and everything, and then everything he went through for Deadpool. Like he touches on the good and the bad, and it's really a love letter to those Fox properties, kind of wrapping them up or giving them kind of a, hey, you did all right, and it's okay that you were what you were, but also kind of moving things forward of where we could potentially go with the mutants and Marvel and the MCU and everything. But yeah, it was just it's pure entertainment. It was just such joy and fun to watch. And, I think it's time now to jump into our favorite parts and our biggest stuff. So this is where we're going to get into this heavy spoilers. We're going to talk about those cameos, because there were some big cameos and
huge.
Even a couple that I'm surprised that we got in
Absolutely.
there. And some of our favorite moments. So, I mean, if you haven't seen the film, I would not watch any more or listen to any more of this podcast, because you need to go experience for yourself before you get anything spoiled. Like, if you haven't had the chance, go see it first, then come back, come to our socials. We're going to be trying to talk to it on our Discord and everything else. Like, this deserves to be talked about, and we want to go ahead and jump right into it. So with our, heavy spoilers here, we want to start off with the cameos.
Yeah, you've been warned, so here we go. I'm going to count you down. 3, 2, 1. It's go time. So many fun cameos in this, but I do want to kind of start at the beginning because the premise of the film is, you come to find out that Deadpool is kind of accepted to move on in his life. Like, you get this amazing opening sequence though, and it starts in the most absurd way. Like, he's in the suit and in the very most Deadpool way possible, he starts humming along in the Marvel intro song that we all know. You know the song. By the end of it, he jumps right in, and nothing is off limits in this movie. Other than a certain white powdery substance that we don't need to talk about. But outside of that, everything else in this movie, nothing is off limits. Not people's personal lives, not poking fun at the very people paying him to make the movie. Like, it is so dialed up and turned up to 11 in this movie. And it starts out with, him kind of addressing the big elephant in the room when it comes to this movie. That he's like, I know what you're all probably thinking. How are we going to make this without, desecrating the memory of Logan and the legacy that he left?
We're not.
They're not. So you go right to this opening scene where he's at the gravesite of Wolverine from Logan, and he starts digging up Logan's corpse. And you're like, what is going on? Why is he doing this? What's the whole point? And you get to, in my opinion, one of the things that Deadpool does so well is their opening title sequence. Mm-hmm. So a lot of this is tied in with the TVA, which we are introduced to in Loki, which if you've seen the trailers, the TVA is involved in this, but Deadpool is basically tasked with saving his universe, right? Or saving his world. Because, some of the things he's done in the previous Deadpool movies, jumping timelines and doing that, causes the rift that could potentially be killing his timeline. You find out later that Logan's death kind of kicks off this killing of the universe, so he has to go. He's the
anchor for that universe.
What's known as an anchor being, spoiler, obviously. I'm going to stop saying spoiler.
Yeah, we don't have to say spoiler.
We're in spoiler territory now. We're already deep in it. Let's go. But the title sequence in these Deadpool movies is always brilliant. The Celine Dion one from the last film was great. Now you get an awesome showdown between Deadpool and the TVA here, set to the music of Bye 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 by NSYNC.
But what did he use as a weapon?
The literal skeleton of the dead Logan.
Yeah, so we get this. I mean, he's like, is digging down and he found him, but he gets angry and mad, and we're trying to figure out, and he's just kind of sitting there by a tree stump, and we cut over, and it's just a fleshy, dead Wolverine, like clothes torn, a little bit of flesh left, and he's doing an Australian accent, and even calls him Hugh. Yeah. But yeah, he's just sitting there with the skeleton and trying to figure out what he's doing, and yeah, he fights the TVA with Logan's skeleton, adamantium skeleton, set to Bye Bye Bye, all with a dance number.
Full choreography from the music video, if you've ever seen it. It is so funny. It is so
good. The best opening that Deadpool has. All three of them have been fantastic, but this one just...
so good.
It was so amazing.
It's brutal, it's violent, it's gory. Disney spared no expense in letting him make a full Deadpool movie, which I'm so thankful for, because it is bloody, it is violent, it is gory, it is vulgar. They use anything you come to expect from the previous Deadpool movies. It's turned up to 11 here. And, this kicks off these events where he's tasked with, basically joining this, what you find out to be like an underground version of the TVA, kind of like an off-books group where this guy's doing his own thing, but he's trying to enlist Deadpool to help the TVA, store the sacred timeline, and just a lot of absurd things that come into it. But you start getting cameos right away. So the very first thing that Deadpool does is he sets out to find another Wolverine.
Well, I want to touch on the TVA moment before we really get into there, because we do get to go with Paradox, and he's hyping him up to show him that, all right, you could be an Avenger. We know what you want. And he's showing him, he salutes Captain America and everything. And then we get to see Thor and Deadpool together in a scene it's from Thor: The Dark World, where he's holding Loki, but instead of Loki, it's Deadpool, because that's kind of a thread throughout the movie. We have him waking up from naps and Thor, like, huh? Like, what? He's trying to figure out, even at the very end of the movie. He's like, why was Thor crying? So you got, it's a Chris Hemsworth cameo, but it's not really, because they just edited Loki out and replaced him with Deadpool. But that was just so fun seeing him do that, because he announces that he's Marvel Jesus, and We even because it's one of my favorite fourth wall breaks of the movie there after they do all that and they kind of hyping up that he could be an Avenger and he's doing all this stuff. So he runs away, grabs a camera and gives a big just screw you, Fox, headbutts it and all that. And just it was, and then he just runs so giddily back to Paradox. Like, I just wanted to touch on that before we jumped in because I love that moment. That was just so hysterical of him breaking the wall by literally breaking the camera, as I just broke Wolverine here. So, I keep knocking this over. But I destroyed Wolverine. It's just that easy.
Well, he can't be destroyed, so that's neither here nor there.
But after all that stuff, it jumps into, he's like, what? I'm going to go find another Logan, and I'll save my universe by bringing the anchor being back to my world.
Before we jump, it reminds me of one thing. So you do kind of get that pause before the title sequence of, okay, how did we get to this point? And it kind of does flash back to him landing on this, like winding up on this Earth and kind of resolving to the fact that he's trying to join the Avengers. He does actually, in a very funny moment, apply to be an Avenger.
Yeah, it's our first real cameo.
Yeah, there. Your first cameo in the film is Happy Hogan. Jon Favreau shows up as Happy Hogan and is interviewing Wade, who has goals of wanting to be an Avenger. The whole theme of this movie is around Deadpool wanting to do things that matter. Like, he wants to not let his gifts go to waste. He's trying to prove something to Vanessa.
Vanessa's left him because he's just kind of won't talk to her. He's locked in himself. He's not doing anything anymore. After the Avengers turned him down, he was just kind of lost. So he's on this journey to find purpose that might get Vanessa back.
Yeah, and it's a very funny interview that he gives. And they allude to, like, Iron Man, like, not being the one to interview him, and he's like he doesn't really do this type of thing, and he just looks at he kind of looks and goes, cameos? I mean, does these interviews. And there's a lot of fun Easter eggs in Happy's office that are a lot of ode to different Marvel things that you've seen over the years. So if you're into that sort of thing, that's a scene to kind of pay a little extra careful attention to. We won't go into
Iron Man.
Yeah, we won't go into all of those, but a lot of odes to previous, Marvel movies and Marvel things like that. But now we get to the hunt for Wolverines, right? So he's going, and he starts going through different portals. He gets a hold of one of the TVA. He calls it what is it?
Amazon Fire Phone,
which is hilarious. And he just starts jumping into universes, and he starts trying to locate all these different Logans. So we start going through and finding all of these different iterations of Logan. And the very first one he winds up going to meet is one that gives me just one of the biggest laughs. He comes up, and you see it's a close-up of Hugh Jackman's face, and he looks like the Wolverine we all know. And then he jumps off the bar stool, and he's legitimately comic book accurate Wolverine. If you know anything about Wolverine, he's very short compared to most of the other X-Men, and it's just an absurdly short. And he's just talking to him like he's a little baby and all this other stuff. It's so funny.
And it's so good because it's a lot of people had issue with Hugh Jackman being Wolverine because he's like 6'2".
Right.
He's a very big guy. Like, I want comic accurate. This is why you shouldn't do comic accurate. It looked ridiculous on purpose. Like, it's itty bitty tiny, look like little kid Wolverine. Like, it works in comics and animated series, but I don't see that small stature working. And yeah, they played it off so brilliantly. That's one of my favorites. Just seeing Hugh Jackman as an itty bitty tiny Wolverine and Deadpool like, oh, look at you.
It's so funny. And then he starts going and he finds some of these others. And the big theme is he gets attacked by all of these Wolverines, right? So he's like leaving different universes, and there's some funny ones. And he eventually comes upon this big, ripped, jacked looking Wolverine, and you only get the view of him from behind. And he's like, oh, this is the right one. This is the perfect one. And he's like, you bear almost a striking resemblance to, and you cut to him, and he turns his head, and it's Henry Cavill in our first, like, variant cameo that we've been waiting for as Logan, as
the Calvarine.
They call him the Cavaline, I think, or the Cavalrine. It is so funny, and he just looks just ginormous, jacked out of his mind, like a huger version, kind of a play on another. If you wanted to recast it, he's one that's been talked about a lot as being recast as Logan if they ever did, and you get that moment real quick, and it's just so funny and so good. He makes a funny DC joke at the end and winds up getting away from him before he can be attacked by him. But it was such a cool moment.
Yeah, Henry looked so awesome just for the brief moment of being that with the cigar in the mouth and turning around, and yeah, he's still as jacked as ever and just attacks him. But yeah, the DC joke, just all that together, like, because there's so much controversy about he came back in Black Adam and they were potentially going to bring him back, and then James Gunn's like, nope, I got my new Superman, and we got all this and that. And for them to include Henry in the biggest Marvel movie of the year, just to kind of have that dig was just, I mean, it's, what else would you expect from Ryan to have that included?
Makes a joke about treating you better than the folks down the street or something like it. Was so funny. This is a cameo that, without spoiling the movie for my friends that hadn't seen it, that I know are very big Henry Cavill fans. I'm like, this is a cameo you're going to enjoy, not alluding to the fact that he's in it, but I was like, there's a couple cameos you're really going to enjoy if you're, a fan of this man. That they are, and it's one that I can't wait for them to see and talk about with, because I know they're going to love that one specifically.
Yeah, one of the ones that I really love that they did was we get another jump, and we get Wolverine coming up behind a tree, but he's wearing the classic brown suit. And there's a slight little talk, and we basically get the comic book cover because he gets his claws out, and we see Hulk's face in the claws, and we turn around, and there's the Mark Ruffalo Hulk behind Deadpool, who just smashes Deadpool and everything. But I mean, that's one of the most infamous comic books and matchups that we've had of Hulk versus Wolverine that everyone's wanted to see. And then we didn't get them fighting, but we got brown suit Wolverine and Hulk together in a scene. Like, that was just awesome to see.
Amazing. And he ultimately winds up meeting the Wolverine that we wind up getting for the remainder of the film. So he does find the right one. He's a Wolverine that's a bit down on his luck, did some things he's not proud of. He's kind of wallowing in his own misery. He's an alcoholic. He's, a lot of the things that you kind of know about what Logan becomes eventually that we see. And he winds up getting this one, and in a funny moment, he picks up a bottle and just chugs this bottle of whiskey and passes out, and he has to pick him up. And as he goes to pick him up, he looks under and he's like, oh, those are some nice jammies. And then it cuts to the next scene where he's carrying him into the TVA, and you get the full on, yellow and blue Wolverine suit that everybody's been clamoring to see him wear ever since he took on that role that he never got to do with the Fox properties. But here he is in all his full glory. But he throws him down. They tell him, they would have accepted almost literally any other Wolverine, but this, in true Deadpool fashion,
brought the worst
is the
one.
worst one. Like, he's the one that caused his world to, he's the one that didn't save his world, that kind of thing. And he's done a bunch of stuff that he's not proud of, which is a big burden and thread that carries throughout his arc in this film. It's a big moment for him, and you learn a lot more about that as the movie goes on. But now they kind of start, and you realize that, these guys at the TVA are off the books. They're not officially acting in any TVA capacity. They're kind of doing their own thing with their own mission.
Yeah, because we didn't really talk about the heart of what Paradox is doing here, is that he has created this device that he's going to destroy Deadpool's world, because their anchor being is gone. It may take a few thousand years for the world to kind of just destroy itself, and he doesn't want to wait. I'd rather, it kind of touches on what we had in the Loki seasons, is that they used to go in and prune, just destroy those universes, and now they're like, hey, we shouldn't be doing that. And so he's supposed to, for the next 1,000 to 2,000 years, watch Deadpool's world die. Well, no, he wants that to be quicker, because he wants to become the TVA. He wants to just go in and destroy things that, timelines and worlds that just aren't going to survive. And, we find that out, that Paradox is kind of one of our villains in the end. Like, he's a rogue TVA agent who's kind of doing whatever he wants, because he sets forth most everything that happens between the machine that they're building. But, we get Wolverine finally sent, and I don't know why it made me laugh and giggle as much as that. Well, Deadpool's kind of talking. He's right behind me, isn't he? Like, he's laying on the floor behind you, and then he's probably going to wake up. But just because he stands up, he's like, right behind me. That old line of, he's right behind me, isn't he? And just sees Wolverine standing behind him, and we we get the TVA doing something to them that leads them to a new area that gets kind of our biggest cameos going.
Yeah, and then, so they wind up in this place called the Void, and you get the first real big fight outside of the title sequence now in, Wolverine and Deadpool. Before they team up, they have to fight. So, Wolverine,
let's give the people what they want.
Let's give the people what they want, and they have a fight. It's a lot of fun, and they wind up ultimately kind of getting on the same page after that. The fight sequence, I'm not intentionally skipping it. It's a great fight sequence. Mm-hmm. It gives you so many cool things about, like, you see Wolverine fighting a little bit of a different way than you see in some of the other movies, but it's a really fun back and forth, a really good fight for a good solid 30 seconds to a minute.
Ryan made me laugh so much in this movie because of one simple little thing, and I don't know why. Again, another thing that just made me giggle as much. In that fight, every time he pulls out this little knife, it's baby knife, and then he stabs. So before he uses that knife, it's always baby knife.
He telegraphs it. It's so funny, but now you start getting to some of the more fun aspects of the movie, right? So they're in the Void. You see a guy cloaked in its Overwatch tower, kind of letting him know, hey, there's somebody coming, just a heads up. And you know how much Deadpool reveres the Avengers. You recognize the voice once you hear it, because it's unmistakable if you're a fan of Marvel.
And the clothing has peaks of red and blue and military pants.
Yeah, I can't
boots.
imagine who that would be. So your mind naturally assumes that. So you assume that it's Captain America, it's Steve Rogers. And these people show up, and he makes a fun Mad Max joke that was really funny, that plays out again later. But he looks up to the guy in the tower, and he's like, hey, you're going to hear some foul language or something. And then he jumps down, he does the superhero landing, lifts up his hood, and it's Chris Evans. So we get the first really big cameo in the film, and it's Chris Evans. You assume that he's coming back as Captain America, but guess what?
You get Deadpool is just like excited, like, oh my gosh, he's going to say the thing. He's going to say the thing. Avengers?
And then you hear the words that Brad and I have been waiting to hear. This is something that we've alluded to it a little bit before, but when we first heard that Marvel was doing the multiverse, this is a scenario that we thought would be amazing if they could pull it off. And this is the first fan service moment specifically for you and I in the film. And we both lost our minds when this happened, because they finally did it. And he's Deadpool's hyping him up to say it. Like, before he goes, he's like, oh, he's going to say the thing. He's going to say it. And he goes, Avengers. And then instead of saying Avengers Assemble, he says the words flame on. And the cloak goes away, and he's in the full Johnny Storm Fantastic Four outfit, lights up into flames and shoots up into the sky. Like, he's not Captain America. He's Johnny Storm. And that's our first big swerve cameo. I
loved it. Yeah.
I lost it.
I was incredible.
So happy.
Because, they gave you that red herring that he looks like he's Cap. So how did Cap end up in the Void? So kind of how people get to the Void, which we got from, Loki. They have those sticks that they hit people with and they disappear. But we don't know if that's instant death or whatever. That's going to the Void. So, how would Captain end up in the Void? Nope, it's Johnny Storm. So he got to bring back his Fox character, but also got to play something that very non-Captain America, like very crass, heavy language, vulgar, but it was just so great. Like, there's so many jokes at his expense, and too, like, do you realize what he's doing to the budget? And other things. It was just so fantastic, because we had kind of rolling up there of where he was flaming on was what we find out is Cassandra Nova's group of villains that she has in the Void. So you have Pyro, and we see Sabretooth, and we see a whole lot more, and they're rolling up Mad Max style. So we got the Fantastic Car, we have, which looks like a blend of Red Skull's vehicle with one of Tony Stark's hot rods, and one big one that's clearly just to be a Mad Max vehicle within there, with Sabretooth holding on to 4 or 5 motorcycles that's leading the whole thing. And that was really fun, because there's a lot of controversy of, so this is Tyler Mane from the original X-Men with Hugh Jackman returned as Sabretooth, who looks a lot shabbier and stuff. And so we got a few fights in there, but we get a great moment with, after the Deadpool and Wolverine fight, there's swords and knives sticking out of Wolverine. He's like, you look ridiculous, and takes everything out, gives him a pep talk, and they go to fight, and he ends up taking Sabretooth out pretty easily, but there's some more great Mad Max jokes and like bad Australian accent from Ryan Reynolds that just made that, between having Johnny Storm and having that with Sabretooth and the whole Mad Max stuff, like it was so good.
It's so fun. And then, they wind up being taken by Cassandra Nova's group to her lair, which is, if you've seen the trailer, it's the big Ant-Man. The big Ant-Man skeleton basically is a lair made from the skeleton of dead Ant-Man, who's enlarged as big as he can, and it's where her lair is set. It's a very fun interaction between the two of them. We're not going to get too graphic into all the plot details in here, but you kind of understand who she is, what she means to the Void. And now it's up to Deadpool and Wolverine to get out of the Void and get back to their world so they can help save Deadpool's world. And that's where things kind of kick out. So you come to find out through their brief interaction with Johnny Storm in this film that there's a group of similar people to him that are kind of rising up to take Cassandra Nova out and kind of, save the day, more or less. And we get more on that later, obviously. But a good chunk of this film takes place in the Void. So that's where we kind of stay throughout a good chunk of this film now. There is some, back and forth between the TVA and then, the conflict between Deadpool and Wolverine. Like, he's trying to enlist Wolverine to help because he thinks he can save his world too. And there's a fun back and forth between them there, which leads to an absolutely insane fight. And we'll get to that in a minute. But as they're moving forward, we finally interact with another couple quick cameos in this movie.
I did want to touch on with Cassandra Nova because there was a lot of cameos there as well. So we got Ray Park returning as Toad. With that, we had Juggernaut and Lady Deathstrike. They were new actors, so it wasn't the original actors, but we got to see them both again. We also had Callisto, Azazel, the Russian from The Punisher, wearing his white and red shirt. So there was a ton of different cameos right in that group, even a small cameo because they end up escaping from Nova's group by taking a Sentinel leg and getting it to work and skyrocketing them out. But yeah, after all that, they end up running into our first of the Deadpool Corps that we get. Mary Poppins, Dogpole, comes running up a hill to him, and then we have Nicepole running behind, which is just Ryan Reynolds as the friendliest Canadian Deadpool you've ever met, who hilarious stuff like, "Where's your mask?" I'm like, really?
See the face.
And that was him as Nicepole was so hysterical because of all the stuff that they went back and forth with his own self of that, but the whole just almost borderline like, okay, he really went for that because like Dogpole is licking his face and licking him in the mouth, and then he starts tonguing Dogpole back and stuff, and it's like, because Dogpole is in real life won, I think it was Britain's ugliest dog contest, so that became, it's kind of a hairless other than like a little mohawk on its head with the tongue always sticking out of its mouth. Cute little dog, but it's a very
ugly dog.
Very ugly dog at the same time. But the whole interaction there with Nicepole was so great to where he offers to help him, and he has a ride to get him out of there and get them on their way.
Yep, and they're looking specifically for this group now, so there's a fun joke made about some fun jokes throughout the movie made about Honda Odysseys, which is absurd and hilarious.
Yeah, because we kind of forgot to talk about in the kind of flashback that he was working as a used car salesman. Yeah. So he was making fun of Kias and Hondas, and they end up in a Honda Odyssey, which he hates. And, as they drive off, they end up getting in a fight in the van, which we got just a tiny bit. I was expecting more of it. The Greatest Showman song started playing when they started fighting, but it more went into Avril Lavigne played as they went away, but it was Grease, the main song from Grease started playing, and that fight was so fantastic in the van, like very bloody, just over the top, like because Wolverine ends up going off on Deadpool, like, you are a loser, you're never gonna amount to anything, you're terrible, you're horrible, and Deadpool's like, I'm gonna fight you now. And they get into a very bloody fight that leads us to our group that we run into.
Yeah, so this fight ends with them both just absolutely exhausted. The running gag is that they fight well into the late hours of the night and into the early morning.
Deadpool wrapped up in every seatbelt in the car.
All the seatbelts. It's so funny. But they're both passed out in the back of this vehicle. And you see somebody show up and drive it away. Well, when they come to, they're in a brand new lair. They look around. We kept trying to look for some Easter eggs. We we don't want to touch on that too much, but there's some things in there that this movie is completely littered with odes to everything you've seen so far. One thing Marvel loves is a good Easter egg. And
we did get Deadpool doing a few different actions in the car.
And the part of the conflict between Deadpool and Wolverine is Wolverine discovers that Deadpool is not completely 100% convinced that they can fix his timeline.
Educated wish.
Yeah, he calls it an educated wish. And that's what leads them to fight. But when they wake up in this lair, we get our next big round of cameos, and holy crap, it doesn't underdeliver on this either. So as they're waking up, Wolverine finally finds his alcohol that he's been waiting for, and he's drinking. And at this point, the sleeves are gone, so you get the sleeveless comic book suit Wolverine. Hugh just looking jacked out of his mind. The guy's ridiculous. But the first one to walk through the door, like, who brought us here? How did we get here? And the first person you see walk through the door in full splendor is Jennifer Garner as Elektra from her role in the Ben Affleck Daredevil film, which is awesome. She's the first one to show up, and we're just like, oh, this is crazy. I can't believe they got her. And then right behind him, one we were not expecting.
This was the biggest one to me.
The biggest surprise for me in this movie, honestly, outside of the Johnny Storm thing, you get Wesley Snipes as Blade. Wesley Snipes comes in full Blade attire, like, oh my God. Like, if you know anything about those movies and the relationship that Ryan Reynolds and Wesley Snipes have had over the years.
Of course, they were in the third Blade movie together.
Yeah, they were in the third Blade movie together. And if you know anything about that relationship, they haven't, at least publicly, been on the best of terms in a long time. So him showing up in this movie was insane.
Yeah, because of course Wesley had his legal issues and stuff as well. But yeah, Ryan and Wesley pretty much hated each other because Wesley Snipes was a big, as everyone's kind of said, he was kind of a drama queen on the third Blade movie. And there was even like a scene that from Blade that he refused to open his eyes for a scene, so they had to CG his eyes opening because he was being that big of a drama queen. So, yeah, like, wait, we've got Blade back, and we do get a little good banter between Deadpool and Blade that kind of touches on that kind of relationship between them. But, yeah, I mean, got Elektra back, and if you don't, most everybody knows, if you don't know that Jennifer Garner and Ben Affleck did marry and have divorced, that there is a joke at that expense, which is just fantastically delivered. Like, because we learn about other mutants and other people who had survived or gone into the void here. But then we get yet another cameo that walks in the door behind Blade, and we have Channing Tatum in full absolute Gambit, like head to toes. He's got the overcoat, trench coat, and he's got the chest piece, and he's got the headpiece and the hair, and he's got the Cajun accent. Because if you didn't really know with Channing Tatum, with Fox, he was working on a standalone Gambit film where he was going to play Gambit, and they worked on it for many years, and nothing ever came to fruition of it. And he was really sad and upset about that because he really wanted to play Gambit and hoped one day he would, and he got his chance to play Gambit in Deadpool and Wolverine, and it was fantastic. But there was also so much great dialogue behind, because one of the things that people had worries about with Channing doing Gambit, would he be able to handle the accent? And they just went full bore, all out. Who's your dialect coach? Like, what are you saying? I feel like we're missing so much exposition because I can't understand you.
It's so funny, but it's so well done. You get this payoff. He was like, and they do make some jokes about the fact that the movie does. This is what I mean. Like, nothing is off limits. You talk about Jennifer Garner's divorce. You talk about the rocky relationship between, Wesley Snipes and Ryan Reynolds. You talk about the fact that this Gambit movie never got made. He's like, it almost seems like you were trying to do it, but you couldn't quite do it. But then you tried and you couldn't quite get it done. Like, he's just kind of like needling and poking fun of the fact that this movie didn't get made. And it's not the last cameo that we see from this group. So these three show up. There's some dialogue back and forth, and they were like, well, we didn't bring you here. It was our fourth. Because you come to find out there's 5 of them. You find out that Johnny was working with these 3, and then the last person that shows up, and they alluded to her a little bit before this, but you get X-23. You get the girl that Logan ultimately sacrificed himself to save at the end of Logan. You get Daphne, you get Laura, the Daphne's the actress that plays her, you get Laura, you get X-23 from the Logan movie, is the last member of this team, which is awesome. And you get this real, like, neat, like, almost like, can't believe it's really you stare down between her and this Logan, because the last she left with Logan obviously was the heroic sacrifice that he made at the end, which kind of ultimately winds up kicking off all of these events. But you get her; she's a little bit older now, obviously, but you get this character, and it kind of really takes off after that.
Yeah, it kind of led to some real heart and dramatic moments too, because we get a scene where Laura X-23 is sitting down with Wolverine and talking to him about who Logan was to her and how he's still down on himself, because the whole movie Wolverine is just feeling bad about himself, like he let the whole world down, like all the X-Men died, and after that he went berserk. We kind of hinted that he went to the berserker Wolverine, where he just started killing everybody and anybody, and that's kind of where his mental state is, that he doesn't deserve to live, but he can't die. Other than, because he kind of asked about how did the Logan one die? Like, oh, he just ran out of batteries was the overall explanation of that. But clearly we've got a Wolverine who was not anywhere near old man, Logan Wolverine. But it was a great moment to allow Daphne and Hugh to have another moment, because I think she was like 12 when they filmed Logan, and she's now more 17, 18, 19. Somewhere in there, and so she's much older, and so she's having those conversations with him, and it was kind of great moments that got to some of the darker, more emotional parts of the story.
Yeah, and there's a really fun line in there. I don't want to say fun, but like a really impactful line was Logan's whole thing up to this point is, I'm not the guy, I'm not the right guy, and she kind of looks back and says, you were never the guy, like, and it's kind of like helps kind of connect some of the things here, like you weren't the guy, but you did it anyway, kind of thing.
You were the guy until you were you weren't the guy until you were needed to be the guy.
Right, and it kind of helps snap him a little bit out of that funk, which now you get to the point where they go on this assault on, Cassandra Nova's compound. They talk each other up to where they're ready to go face off with Cassandra Nova.
Yeah, they need to use her to get them out of there, because she somehow has some way to get them out of the void, but she doesn't want to use it because she's like the queen here. But there's a joke about Magneto's helmet could be the only thing, because if you don't know much about Cassandra Nova's character, kind of jumping back a little bit and cutting you off, she is Professor X's twin sister. So she has very similar powers, but she is much more evil. She uses it for bad and does some really things. She also does a lot of mind melding, where she basically sticks her hands through the heads of people to be able to read their minds. But yeah, the group has decided they're going to assault her compound to get her to release Deadpool and Wolverine back into their world so they can try to save it.
Yep, and that's where it really takes a leap forward. You get this fun, just absurd-looking shot of all of these guys rolling up in this beat-up Honda Odyssey to kind of start this assault on the compound. And you get one of my favorite lines in the entire movie. So to get in, Blade goes up through the sunroof, gets handed a rocket launcher, which happens to be the Punisher. It happens to be the Punisher's rocket launcher. They're like, where'd you get that? It's from the Punisher. Deadpool makes a funny joke. Which one? There have been 5, poking fun at the fact that multiple actors have played this character. And he hands it, Blade gets it, and he's like, there were 5. He's like, there's only been one Blade. There's only ever going to be one Blade. Deadpool just kind of looks at the camera kind of funny, which kind of pokes fun at what we've been talking about ad nauseum, is we've been waiting forever and poking fun at the fact that this Blade movie just hasn't gotten made yet, even though it's been talked about for the last 5 years.
And that's what we talk about, how they let them do whatever. That's making fun of how they have not been able to get a Blade movie off the ground, and that they've gone back to, there was no one that was off limits. They just basically seemed like they allowed Ryan to do whatever he wanted without any notes or anything else. That joke is, that's cutting at the core. Oh, you're screwing up and you haven't been able to make a Blade movie for 4 or 5 years now. And it's I'm the only Blade and the only one there ever will be. It was just
a very meta joke.
So good.
Fun. And that's what we said. Nothing is off limits here. But you get to this compound. They have this face off the fight. All of the characters that you've seen here get some fun time to shine. You get, Gambit doing his Gambit thing with the exploding cards. He did such a great job with the choreography. The stunt work was done great.
Had his staff
and everything. You get full Gambit, a real a real good moment for them. And they kind of joke in facts like, this isn't meant for us. This isn't a moment for us. This is giving us an ending is what they call it. Just
because especially Gambit said something about just like getting his moment. Like this is my moment. And it's Channing saying that this is my moment to finally be Gambit.
Right. And you get this conclusion for all of these characters that never got to either follow up with final movies or end the story in the way they wanted to. And you eventually get to the point where there's the battle, there's a fight, they get to Cassandra, and through various means, we won't dive into all of the intricate details here, they ultimately spare her life, and she agrees, through the conversation that they have, to send them back to their Earth with her own nefarious intentions behind it as well. But the way she has a way to get back to the world is she has attacked what we assume to be a Doctor Strange variant.
Yeah, you could see the cloak just a little bit in there of Doctor Strange.
Yeah, and she killed a Doctor Strange variant and has his, I don't remember what they call it, but
his sling. But it looked like there was 2 Infinity Stones on each side, so it had to be the Time Stone and the red, which I can't remember which one.
It's the one from Thor: The Dark World. It's
but
like the
Reality
Stone is what.
And another favorite line, which I might not even be remembering right, when she's opening up the pearl, he's like, oh, sparkling Marvel circle.
Yeah, I love that. It's so funny. But they open a portal back to their world, which they ultimately wind up getting back. And they get back to the main world where, they wind up right where they need to be, which is the subway entrance to this TVA lair. And Paradox runs out and meets them.
Which is right where Blind Owl's apartment is. So everything happens on this street.
Which is absurd, but of course it is. And, now you get this final showdown where Cassandra Nova shows up, comes to find out she's wanting to use this Time Ripper stuff for herself after she finds out the Paradox is kind of plotting to get rid of her.
Yeah, she wants to destroy all worlds, so only the Void exists.
All that's left is the Void because she's queen there, right? So it leads to the next showdown. So the next portal opens and outruns Dogpool, outruns Nicepool, and then the rest of the Deadpool Corps show up, and they're not nice like Deadpool is. So they're working for, Cassandra Nova at this point. First one to walk through the portal is Lady Deadpool, who they do allude to earlier in the film with some funny jokes that we won't make. But Lady Deadpool walks out. You don't physically see who she is, but we do wind up, and I'm going to spoil it here. So Lady Deadpool was Blake Lively in the costume. There's a fun social media post out there from the creator of Lady Deadpool who, gives her some flowers, and come to find out that I wasn't aware of this really, but it was a cool tidbit. He got the inspiration for Lady Deadpool watching an episode of Gossip Girl and seeing Blake Lively and being so enamored with her, not only her presence on screen, but her character, that he created Lady Deadpool based on her.
Yeah, there's a fantastic joke earlier about Gossip Girl that's just so good. It is so good. But yeah, we get the Deadpool Corps showing up, so we've got so many different variants. We've got Headpool, which ended up turning out to be Nathan Fillion, was a voice of Headpool. We had Kidpool, which gets to make a crash joke that I had to look up. That was actually one of Blake and Ryan's kids. Yep. Was playing Kidpool. Yep. We also got Matthew McConaughey played Cowboy Deadpool, so I didn't really recognize a voice right away, so I'm like, who is this? And I looked in the credits after the second time we watched it, and I was like, wait, that was Matthew McConaughey was Cowboy Deadpool. But I mean, you're looking at hundreds. You've got samurais, you've got darker, you're like a couple Canadian Deadpools, because there's one that was in a darker suit, but he had the Canadian flag on him and everything. Like, so many variants that were just so fun. Just could have set up one of the most ludicrous, over-the-top fight scenes. And I don't want to go into everything that, even though we're doing heavy spoilers, we don't want to give absolutely everything away about the best moments, but there was some great moment with Nicepool and stuff that happens there to lead us into our epic Deadpool and Wolverine versus the Deadpool Corps fight, which this is where we finally get Hugh Jackman in the cowl, which again, it's done in such a ridiculous way because, we find out that it just kind of tucked into the neck of his uniform that he's been wearing this whole time. And he looked absolutely amazing with the cowl on. Like, that was just a moment where I was smiling like a little kid. I was like, it's Wolverine.
It's finally Wolverine, looking like Wolverine. The cowl looked amazing. They even Deadpooled it up to where the eyes look similar to Deadpool's through his mask, through the Wolverine mask.
Because there's actually some movement that was going on.
You get a little, if you're paying a little bit of it, and it's the fun attention to detail that they do, and they take good care of it. But yeah, I mean, he's full sleeves ripped, and it's fun because they didn't show it in the trailer, and I'm so glad they didn't, because it's CGI'd out of the trailer to where it looks like he doesn't have the cowl on. But when you get to this fight, pulls it up over his eyes, and he was like, even Deadpool like fanboys for a moment. It's so funny.
Only took 20 years
for this to do, and they go, and he's just like ready to fight, and the claws come out. And
absolutely
full, like,
brutal
like
Wolverine,
and you just get into it, and they just lay into all of these Deadpool all these different variants of Deadpool, and you get this fun fight set to the song "Like a Prayer" by Madonna, which is hilarious because you know anything about Deadpool. You can't have a good fight sequence without a funny song. See the beginning of the film, but it so works out, and you get this really fun moment where they fight into a subway or a bus. They get to the back of the bus, and as they break out to the bus, you get the full on, like, you're laughing because you know where I'm going with this, but it's half cool, half funny, because you get the full on, like, Wolverine launching like he does in the comics, with like his full on like snarl with the blades, just looking awesome, and then you get Deadpool jumping out with him and tripping over his own foot and tumbling to the outside.
It's just smacking face first into the ground while Logan and Wolverine just looks amazing. Yeah. Oh, I ruined it.
He's like, these are the things everybody remembers, and I'm going to be remembered for that. But it was so funny, so good. And then you get to what winds up being kind of the latter part of the film, the very end of the film, and them trying to stop Cassandra Nova from using this Time Ripper to start the deletion of all the worlds. And it gets in to the most dramatic way possible, but you come to find out the only way to stop it is for somebody to sacrifice themselves to stop, these two elements that make this Time Ripper work come together and converge and shut it down, basically. So you get this cool back and forth between Deadpool and Wolverine.
That was a really great moment of those two trying to decide who's going to do it.
My personal favorite dialogue moment of the film, because you get these two people going head to head, where you have, on one hand, you have Wolverine, who's finally accepted responsibility for his actions and is ready to, kind of ultimately redeem himself, because it's what Charles would have wanted for him, right? Him to be the Wolverine, to be the hero that he was always meant to be, that he didn't get the chance to do because he was so caught up in himself. And you find out that he left the X-Men to die and wasn't there when they were attacked by the humans, and that's what kind of set him off, and he was feeling guilty about that and felt that burden. So this is like his chance to finally redeem himself. And on the other hand, you've got Deadpool, whose entire arc in this movie has been about him finding purpose, being the hero, because the whole theme is you don't seem like the world-saving type is like the theme throughout the entire movie. He gets told this multiple times, like multiple people tell him, you're not really the world-saving type, you're aiming too high to be an Avenger, like those types of things. So he gets this opportunity to have his heroic moment and save his world, even if it means I can't go back to it. At least I can save it. So you kind of have these two forces converging. It's a very, very brilliantly written moment down here. And it's just a real heartfelt moment, which, as only Deadpool can do, cuts right through it with some humor by the end. But they eventually agree that Logan's going to be the one to make the sacrifice. Logan walks through, has this really cool moment where he's looking back, and you get the profile of the cowl and him in the suit looking like cool.
It looked amazing.
It looked so freaking good. Like, I love it so much. He's like, say hi to your friends for me. And he goes to walk through. And as he goes to turn around and shut the door, as only Deadpool can, bops him in the face with a fire extinguisher, throws him out the door, shuts it and locks it, and makes it a funny joke like, am I really a hero or Avenger, or am I just Khan?
Or am I
Spock from Wrath of Khan, where he makes the sacrifice? It's so funny. It just kind of cuts through, but you eventually get to the point now where Deadpool's ready to do. Wolverine's like upset because he respects it. He thinks he's an idiot for doing it, but it's like, this is my moment to do this, whatever. And it gets to the point where Deadpool's trying to do it. He gets one side of it, and he's trying to bring the other side together, and he can't quite make it in time.
We're in this room that it's supposed to be matter and antimatter, so they're spaced out quite a bit there, and yet Deadpool goes for one, and he's trying to hold it and pull it over, but he clearly can't do it in a very Guardians of the Galaxy type of tie-in and way.
The tie I was gonna make.
Yeah, Logan comes in and he stabs it with his claws and stuff, and we have them holding hands, and they're kind of sharing the energy. I was expecting a very Guardians of the Galaxy kind of joke or moment that they didn't really touch on, because it was very much to there. But we get another one of my, because I want to jump in, because this is one of my favorite here at the end, is that, Hugh Jackman is much older. That's what he's talked about, not, kind of retiring after Logan. He didn't want to come back because of what it took for him to get in shape and keep up, and what he put his body through to be Logan. And so Deadpool stays in his full suit the whole time, but whenever the antimatter and matter come together between them, Wolverine's shirt just blows off, and you're left with a ridiculously ripped Hugh Jackman with a very defined six-pack of abs, and Deadpool just leaning out and looking at his abs, like
nodding approval. Because they do make some of it. This is, and I don't mean to cut you off, but
no, I cut you off. I'm going to cut you off again.
It's fine. We'll do it again before we're done. But it cuts back to an earlier joke that they make in the film, because the suit that he wears throughout a good chunk of it looks a little bulky on him, right? It looks a little big on him. Like, he doesn't look as ripped, as defined as it could. And they make a joke like, "Oh, you're not in the best shape since you're divorced," or something, kind of playing off the real life marital situation that Hugh Jackman was in.
I think that was going on when he was filming.
Right. Yeah. So he was going through that as they were making this movie. So he was making a divorce joke to him, not staying in the best of shape because of the divorce kind of thing or whatever. And then you get to the end of this film, and like you said, the thing just bursts off in the most absurdly comic type way, but you get full on 8-pack.
And we get some jokes as they leave, because kind of they were told that this is going to kill whoever does it. So, we get another cameo of Hunter B-15 from the Loki series shows up.
She's
she's here to arrest Paradox, because they found out that he's doing this, and that he's gone rogue, and she shows up, which we kind of didn't go into, that Peter makes a good cameo right before this. So we come down and they think everything's done, they're dead, and then Deadpool just cackles like, "Nope, here we are," and just here they are walking out, and Hugh with his shirt off still, with the cowl on, and there's women and men who are all just kind of staring at him like, wow.
Holy crap.
But the kind of one of the last funny moments is Peter shows up in Deadpool's uniform that he left in his locker, and it barely fits, but it definitely shows that Peter is
well equipped,
and there's a great funny couple moments between him and Hunter B-15, because they're just staring at each other like, oh yeah. That kind
he's like, "They're with me,
look,
he's okay," and she's like, "You look fantastic in that suit," and it's the suit that he wore in the previous 2 movies. So it's that fun dichotomy. Peter winds up being the fun joke about Peter. We'll step back just a little bit. The end of the conflict between Wolverine and Deadpool and the Deadpool Corps is they get ready to fight round 2, because they all regenerate, because that's what Deadpool does, with the exception of one, which we won't go into. But Peter shows up riding a bike in the full Peter costume, and all of the Deadpool variants are like, "Peter, that's your Peter." And there's like, "You guys know Peter?" They're like, "All of our universes have a Peter. Peter's a legend," and they're all like, Peter, like, just, it was the most absurdly Deadpool kind of like, oh, this is how we're going to end this fight in the most absurd way possible. But Peter's like Deadpool's anchor being, his own individual anchor being, which is so funny. It's like his Uncle Ben or his Aunt May, what I mean? Like that kind of, Uncle Ben's probably not the best analogy, but maybe like his Aunt May for Spider-Man is kind of thing. And it was just so funny. But yeah, Peter gets a fun full moment here. There's just so much fun stuff going on. They save the day, come to find out that there's nothing really to save from, he was able to save his world, and, they can't really fix Wolverine's world, but he seems okay with that. And he winds up going back with, Deadpool and kind of hanging out. And
it's a great cutback to the bonus scene from the Avengers, because after the big first Avengers fight, they go and eat shawarma. And so Deadpool just looks at Wolverine, "You want to go get some shawarma?" "Sure." Yeah. And he's like, you realize Avengers
discovered shawarma. It's just so funny.
It was so
kind
good,
of a play on how popular that food got after that movie. But yeah, you get that end. You get a lot of other cameos from characters from the previous Deadpool movies, especially at the beginning, like all the people that he's trying to save are the people that you've known and loved from the first 2 Deadpool movies. So you've got Dopinder, you've got Blind Owl, you've got Yukio, you've got Teenage Negasonic Warhead, Colossus, like all of those characters are the people that he's trying to save. I know we jokingly talked about one of my favorite just back and forth bits of dialogue has always been between Yukio and Deadpool. Like Yukio is like so sweet and so innocent, and he's always like apologizing for like absurd things or bad things that he says. Or whatever. He's like,
Deadpool lights up when she's around. Yeah. He's, oh, I'm so sorry.
I'm so sorry, Yukio. She's like, hi, Wade. Like, it's just, I love that. I don't know why it makes me laugh every time. It's so fun. But yeah, that's where it kind of leads off, is where like he kind of integrates himself into the group. X-23 goes with them as well. She winds up making it out. They don't really explain that, like how she got there, but they wind up sitting at this table, and that's where the movie ends. And it leaves open a lot of possibilities about where they're going. We don't know how they're going to be integrated into the overall MCU yet, but I mean, the threads are there for endless possibilities.
Yeah, so we have the TVA, we have Deadpool and Wolverine together in the same universe, you have X-23 in the same universe now. Like, you've got all this together. The one point that they didn't really touch on that I thought they were going to is, with Colossus there's clearly still an X-Men present in this world, and it really wasn't explored with, I thought maybe Wolverine would head to the X mansion and he would find the rest of the team there or something, but they didn't really touch on that aspect. That's kind of one thing I was expecting, that we were going to get the Fox X-Men show up and he kind of goes back to them, and that's where he finds a spot. But no, he's there with Deadpool and everything. So that was one thread that I thought they were going to touch on, but they didn't. But maybe with how well this one does, they'll do a 4th Deadpool and then also tie into the Avengers and to Avengers films and stuff, because it left endless possibilities. If they want to use Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, they can. If they want to use Deadpool, they can. Like, they left quite a lot open of bringing him in this world, and definitely stay through the credits. So the credits have some special scenes all throughout that kind of harken back to the Fox, paying tribute to the Fox universe. But there is one extra credit scene at the very end, which is hysterical and a throwback to one of our favorite cameos. I'm not going to go into that. Go experience that yourself, because it's just so fun to add into the ludicrous of that cameo and stuff to bring that to an end. But yeah, it was so entertaining. Like, I smiled from beginning to end. I just had so much fun with Deadpool and Wolverine.
So it's easily probably, it's going to be tough to beat this movie this year for me. It met and exceeded all of my expectations. Like, we've talked a lot about what happens in the film, but there's so much more that can be said that we're not going to dive into. Obviously, if you're listening this far, you've probably seen the movie too, or you don't care if it gets spoiled. Either way, cannot recommend going to see enough. We're probably going to see it at least a 3rd time. I know we've both talked about that. One of my favorite jokes that we didn't really talk about in this one is, Ryan Reynolds giving Hugh like the joke of, you're going to be doing this till you're 90 kind of thing. Like, they make some jokes about how, if you're good at it, they'll keep bringing you back for it or whatever. And it was pretty funny throughout, but it was so good, so much fun. It was worth all of the hype that it got built up for it. I'm so happy that, we were able to avoid as many spoilers about this film as we were going into it. There was some stuff out there that you could have found if you wanted to. I know some people that I've already talked to said they had quite a bit of it spoiled for them, which is unfortunate, but at least up until the release of the film, it was pretty light on spoilers outside of stuff that they were putting in the trailers. So you would have had to have dug a little deep to find a little more of those types of things. But man, kudos on them for getting all of this stuff in that nobody reported on, really, that got leaked, that didn't get leaked, that these people showed up and made these appearances. So many fun cameos. We didn't even list them all. Those are the main big ones. But it is such a good film. It's worth going to see. This is what I think is the blueprint for a really big blockbuster comic book movie. It feels like that's kind of back now with that movie. It's already going to make a ton of money. I think we were talking about box office numbers before we rolled in here. It's well over 200 million.
I think it was over 200 million in the first 2 days.
The first 2 days, insane amount of money. This is gonna. it's going to be $1 billion film without a problem. Like, it's going to make a ton of money, and it should. It's worth multiple watches. I'm so happy we've been looking forward to this for so long, and it exceeded all of my expectations.
See, in the end, Deadpool and Wolverine was just pure joy for me. It was so entertaining. The cameos were insane. The story, while it could be slightly thin, it serviced the film well. It did so good at what it was trying to do. Hugh and Ryan were fantastic together. It was so entertaining and is one of my favorite movies of the year.
Yeah, like I said, it's gonna be hard for any movie to beat that for me. I've had so much joy just anticipating seeing this movie, and then everything that we got in the movie, like you said, all of the great cameos, all the funny jokes. It kept all of the heart of what made Deadpool so popular to begin with as far as these movies go. Ryan Reynolds is just on the top of his game in the perfect role meant for him, and it's made in such a way that even if you're not the biggest comic book movie fan or even just the biggest like fan of comics, you don't need to be an ultra mega comic book nerd to kind of follow along these stories. If you've been watching all of these films that have been made over the years, it does such a good job of like not only closing some loopholes for some characters, but presenting them in a way that could start to make sense for what the future of Marvel is going to look like on the screen. It's well worth the price of admission, and I'm so happy we finally got to see this movie and can kind of enjoy everything that they've put into it. And the fact that we even got Hugh Jackman to come back and put the Wolverine costume on and, give us this film is so amazing. And I'm so glad they finally got to do it before they really missed the window of an opportunity to get this done. And it's just, I cannot recommend it enough.
So yeah, Deadpool and Wolverine is in theaters now. Go to the movie theater and see this film. We saw some kids there, but it is a hard R. It is got a lot of language, a lot of violence and gore and stuff to it. If you feel like your kids can handle it, but it's not meant for kids. It's one of those comic book movies that it's meant for the adult fans because Deadpool is kind of an adult character. So it's up to the parents to choose, but it is very hard R.
Very.
So coming up this week, we have the latest M. Night Shyamalan horror film in Trap, where we have, this potentially killer going to a concert, and it's actually a big setup to try to capture him. And then we have a family film in Harold and the Purple Crayon, which has Zachary Levi in it and based off of, I believe, a book series and stuff. So very different films, but you can see what you can find either with your family or going out with some friends to see a horror film.
Yeah, definitely a couple of films that are definitely going to be worth a watch. We will be reviewing one of those, and I'll let you know when we talk about what's coming up next week.
Over on the streaming side, we have Godzilla -1 minus color coming to Netflix on August 1st. So if you're not aware, this is the black and white version of Godzilla -1, which this was my preferred. I loved both versions, but there was something about the black and white treatment that just gave a little bit more horror to Godzilla and gave a little bit more depth to the drama and everything that was going on. So I'm so excited to see this again because we're not expecting until September to get the box set to be able to get Godzilla -1 minus color over here. So this is a first chance, if you didn't see it in theaters, to be able to see it at home. And I'm so glad we finally got this coming out on Netflix.
Yeah, and it's that version that makes it feel much more like the old school Godzilla black and white films. If you're a fan of those, like so many people are, it is the preferred. You can watch it in a subbed version. You can watch it in a dubbed version. I've watched the dubbed version. I think it takes a little bit away from the film, but if you can watch the sub version, watch it in black and white, and it is so good, so much more impactful, and it's definitely one worth watching.
Yeah, we also have Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon, the director's cut. So both of his films redone with more violence, more adult situations and everything else. So this is said to be his preferred version of these films. That's on Netflix on August 2nd. Then over on Apple TV Plus, also on August 2nd, we have the latest kind of team-up movie between Ben Affleck and Matt Damon called The Instigators. You can check that on Apple TV Plus. I've only seen, again, as we talked earlier in our news, of not getting a whole lot of advertising out of Apple. I've seen the trailer once for this and nothing else ever since. I mean, it's Ben Affleck and Matt Damon together again, but there's been one trailer. I am looking forward to checking it out, but it kind of proves, as we talked with them cutting back as well, maybe you need to cut back, but also start advertising.
Yeah, big names, no advertising. It seems to be the theme for Apple TV Plus, unfortunately.
Yeah. On demand, you have A Quiet Place Day 1 available on July 30th to purchase, so you can go back in our archives to see what we thought about that film. We also have Maxine on August 2nd on demand. So be honest, I've never really seen any of those with Pearl and X and Maxine, but I may end up going back and checking them out because they've been a huge talk of film lately. But yeah, we have the potentially final one in the trilogy. They've talked about maybe a fourth. But we've got the final one coming out for you to own.
Yeah, definitely one I'm excited to check out. I've watched the first two, and I think you would really like it. It's definitely one that's worth watching. If you've seen the first two, this is what could potentially be the final one in that set of movies. Definitely one worth checking out.
Yeah, over on the series side, we have Batman Cape Crusader on Prime Video on August 1st. So this is Bruce Timm, who did the original Batman the Animated Series that we absolutely loved, coming back and doing something new, but in a similar style that Batman the Animated Series was. So I'm really looking forward to see how this turned out. All 10 episodes do drop on August 1st, so you can binge watch and check out the entire series. But I'm curious to see, after so long of seeing him come back to Batman, and see how it works out.
Yeah, see if they capture some of that magic that was the brilliance of Batman the Animated Series. It's an animated show that still holds up to this day. Brilliant writing, very well done. My favorite Joker, with Mark Hamill doing the voice of Joker at that point.
And of course, the top Batman with Kevin Conroy.
Yeah, absolutely perfect casting. Just absolutely perfect. Excited to check those out. I believe we'll be doing a review on that down the road as well. But that's going to do it for this week's episode. We can't thank you enough for all your support that you continue to give us. Check out all our social medias. Check out wbtp.link, kind of a conglomeration of everything and everywhere you can find us. Don't forget to enter our merch contest giveaway as well. That'll be coming up on August 9th. But coming up next week on the program, we will be reviewing The Bear Season 3. So we'll be doing kind of an overview of the entire season. It's a show that we both love, and that not the final season, but the next season is dropped, and we'll be talking about that. Looking forward to that. And we will also be reviewing the M. Night Shyamalan film Trap. Very much looking forward to that too. But until next time, I'm Josh, he's Brad, and we'll see you next week.